The morning Elena's life ended, she woke to her father's body hanging from the barn rafters. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stood there in the gray dawn light, bare feet on cold dirt, staring at the man who'd gambled away everything they had and finally found the one bet he couldn't lose. The rope creaked. Somewhere behind the house, a crow called out, sharp and mocking. Her hands shook as she cut him down. 2 days later, men came for the farm. They came with papers and pistols, faces hard as the Missouri winter closing in around them. The lead creditor, a fat man named Hutchins with gold rings on fingers that had never worked, read the debt aloud like it was scripture. $1,700. Her father had borrowed it to buy equipment he'd lost in a card game 3 months later. Then borrowed more to cover that. Then more. "You got anything to settle this?" Hutchins asked, though his eyes already knew the answer. Elena looked around the farm. Broken plow, empty stable, house with holes in the roof. No. Then the property's forfeit. He folded the papers with thick fingers. "And you got 2 choices, girl. You can walk out of here with nothing and freeze before December, or you can come to Ashford Station tomorrow and we'll put you on the labor auction. Someone will take you, give you room and board at least." "Labor auction." Her voice came out flat. "Indenture contract, 7 years, legal and proper." Hutchins smiled, showing teeth that cost more than her father's coffin. Better than starving. She wanted to spit in his face, wanted to grab the shotgun hanging above the door and see how legal and proper that felt. But she was 18 years old, alone, and Winter didn't care about pride. "I'll be there," she said. Hutchins tipped his hat. Smart girl. Eek. Ashford Station wasn't a town so much as a wound in the wilderness. 300 souls, maybe less, clinging to the edge of the frontier where the railroad hadn't reached and wouldn't for another decade. The buildings leaned like drunks against each other. Saloons, trading posts, a general store with bars on the windows. Everything looked temporary, like the whole settlement might pack up and vanish if the winter got too mean or the natives too angry. Elena walked into town with everything she owned tied in a blanket, one change of clothes, her mother's silver brush, a knife. The streets were frozen mud, rutted deep by wagon wheels. Men stared as she passed. She kept her eyes down and kept walking. The auction platform stood in the center of town, a raised wooden stage where they sold horses, cattle, and people too desperate to run. Elena climbed the steps at noon, when the sun was high and cold as a dead man's kiss. 20, maybe 30 people had gathered, mostly men. Ranch hands, trappers, merchants looking for cheap labor. A few women stood at the edges, watching with faces that gave nothing away. The auctioneer was a rail-thin man named Peck with a voice like a saw blade. He grabbed Elena's arm, pulled her forward. "Elena Voss, 18, healthy, can cook, clean, sew. 7-year contract to settle family debt. Starting bid is $50. A hand went up. 75. Another. 100. Elena stood there, wind cutting through her thin dress, while men decided what she was worth. She tried not to look at their faces, tried not to imagine which one would win. The baker with hands like slabs of raw meat, the trapper whose breath she could smell from 10 feet away, the merchant who kept licking his lips. 150, someone called. 175, 200. The price climbed. Elena's stomach twisted. She'd thought she'd be worth less. Thought maybe some farm family would take her cheap, put her to work in a kitchen somewhere. But $200 meant expectations, meant whoever bought her wanted something specific. 250, a new voice said, low and rough. The crowd shifted. Elena looked up. He stood at the back, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 35. Dark hair, darker eyes. Face like it had been carved with a dull knife and never finished properly. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, pulling the corner of his mouth into something that wasn't quite a frown. He wore a heavy coat, weathered leather gloves, and the kind of silence that made people step back without knowing why. "That's Wade Mercer," someone whispered behind her. "Thought he wasn't taking anyone else after what happened to—" "Shut up!" The auctioneer cleared his throat. "250 for Mr. Mercer, do I hear?" 300, the merchant said, glaring at Wade. Wade didn't blink. 500? The crowd went silent. $500 was half a ranch, a year's wages for most men. The merchant's face went red. You're insane. 600, Wade said, still not raising his voice. Nobody bid against him after that. Peck stammered through the rest of it, terms of contract, length of service, legal obligations, while Elena tried to understand what just happened. $600. For her. Why? When it was done, Wade walked up to the platform. Up close, he was even bigger. Hands scarred from work, boots caked with mud, and worse. He looked at Elena like he was judging livestock. You got a coat? He asked. No. He shrugged off his own and handed it to her. It smelled like wood smoke and horse. Put it on. We're leaving. Now? You want to stay here? She put on the coat. Wade's wagon waited at the edge of town, a heavy flatbed loaded with supplies. 2 horses in the harness, both big enough to pull a plow through stone. He helped Elena up to the bench seat, then climbed up beside her. Didn't say a word. Just snapped the reins and drove north, away from Ashford Station, away from the last place Elena had seen another human face that wasn't buying or selling something. They rode for an hour before she finally spoke. Where's your ranch? North. How far? Far enough. She waited. He didn't elaborate. Why did you pay so much? She asked. Wade kept his eyes on the road. Needed help. For $600, you could have hired 3 men. Don't need men. Got plenty of those already. Then what do you need? He glanced at her, just for a second. Something moved behind his eyes, something old and tired and hurt. Someone who won't leave. Before she could ask what that meant, he turned the wagon onto a narrow trail that climbed into the mountains. The trees grew thick here, pine and spruce blocking out the sky. Snow started falling, light at first, then heavier. The temperature dropped. Elena pulled Wade's coat tighter around herself and tried not to think about how far they were from anything that looked like civilization. People in town were talking about you, she said. They said, don't care what they said. They said your wife died, that you... Elena. He didn't raise his voice, but something in it made her stop. You want to survive up here? First lesson is this. Past doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is what you do today. Understood? She nodded. They rode in silence after that. The sun was setting when they finally reached Mercer Ranch. Elena had expected something small, a cabin, maybe a barn. What she got was a valley carved into the mountains, with a 2-story house made of timber and stone, 3 barns, a stable, fenced pastures stretching toward the tree line. It was bigger than anything she'd seen outside of Kansas City. It was also falling apart. Fence posts leaned at crazy angles. One of the barns had a collapsed roof. The house looked solid enough, but the porch sagged and half the shutters hung loose. Everything needed paint, repair, attention. This wasn't a working ranch. This was a ranch dying slowly. Wade stopped the wagon near the house. Before he could move, the front door slammed open and 2 kids came running out. A boy and a girl, maybe 12 years old, identical down to the dark hair and furious expressions. You brought another one, mate, the girl shouted. Are you crazy? Wade climbed down from the wagon. Mara, Eli, inside! No! The boy, Eli, crossed his arms. We don't want her here. Send her back. Can't. Already paid. Then you wasted your money. Mara's voice cracked. We don't need some stranger. I said inside. Wade's voice didn't get louder, but both kids flinched. Now. They went. But not before Mara looked at Elena with pure hatred and said, You won't last a week. Elena sat on the wagon, frozen. She'd known this wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't expected children. Hadn't expected twins who looked at her like she'd murdered their mother herself. Wade came around to her side of the wagon, held out a hand. Come on. She took it. His grip was solid, calloused, strong enough to crush her bones if he wanted, but he helped her down gently. They're angry, he said. I noticed. They've been angry for 3 years since... He stopped, started again. Since their mother died. Had 4 housekeepers before you. Kids ran them all off, figured maybe someone close to their age would work better. I'm 18. They're 12. Close enough. He grabbed a bag from the wagon. You're here now. Might as well try. He walked toward the house. Elena followed because there wasn't anywhere else to go. The inside of the house was worse than the outside. Dust everywhere, dishes piled in the sink, clothes scattered across furniture like someone had given up on laundry months ago. The floor needed sweeping, the windows needed washing. The whole place smelled like old food and resignation. Wade set the bag down. Your room's upstairs, second door on the left. Twins are across the hall. I'm at the end. Elena looked around. What happened here? Told you. Had help before. Didn't work out. How long since the last one left? 2 months. 2 months. No wonder everything looked like a disaster. And you've been doing this yourself? Been trying. He rubbed his face, and for the first time Elena saw how tired he was. Not just physically, tired in a way that went bone deep. Ranch has 20 men working it. Cattle, horses, timber. I'm out there dawn to dark most days. Kids are supposed to manage the house, but he gestured at the mess. They're children. They're Mercers. Supposed to be tougher than this. Elena thought about the rage in Mara's eyes, the defiance in Eli's voice. They're grieving. Wade's jaw tightened. Everyone's grieving. Doesn't stop the work. He walked past her toward the stairs, stopped halfway up. Contract says 7 years. I'll hold you to it. But if you're smart, you'll earn their trust fast. Because if they decide they really hate you, 7 years is going to feel like 70. Then he was gone. Elena stood alone in the ruined house, surrounded by someone else's broken life, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. She started with the kitchen. It took her until midnight just to clear the sink. Dishes crusted with food so old it had fossilized. Pots that hadn't been scrubbed in weeks. She boiled water on the stove, a massive cast iron thing that ate wood faster than she could feed it, and scrubbed until her hands were raw. The twins never came down. She could hear them upstairs, moving around, whispering. Once she heard Mara crying, but they didn't come down. Wade didn't either. By the time Elena finished, the kitchen looked almost human. She'd found bread, eggs, some salted pork. Tomorrow, she'd make breakfast. Try to start over. Something crashed upstairs. She ran, took the stairs 2 at a time, burst into the hallway. The door to the twins' room was open. Inside, Eli stood on a chair, yanking books off a high shelf. Mara sat on the floor, surrounded by loose pages. What are you doing? Elena asked. None of your business, Mara said without looking up. I heard. Then stop listening. Eli threw another book. It hit the wall, spine cracking. This is our house. You're just the hired help. Elena took a breath. I know you don't want me here. Brilliant observation. But I'm here anyway, and I'm not leaving. Mara finally looked up. Her eyes were red, face blotchy from crying. They all say that, then they leave. I can't leave. Contract says 7 years. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. Elena stepped into the room. Your father paid $600 for me. That's more than I'm worth. More than anyone's worth. You know what that means? Eli glared at her. That he's stupid? That he's desperate. Elena sat down on the floor across from Mara. This ranch is dying. Your house is falling apart. Your father is drowning. And you two are so busy being angry that you can't see you're making it worse. We're making it worse? Mara's voice went shrill. Our mother died and he replaced her with strangers. 4 strangers. And now you. I'm not replacing anyone. I'm trying to keep this place from collapsing. We don't need your help. Yes, you do. Elena looked at the mess around them, the broken books, the scattered pages, the absolute chaos. When's the last time you had a real meal? When's the last time this room was clean? When's the last time your father smiled? Silence. That's what I thought. Elena stood up. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I'm making breakfast. You can eat it or not. Your choice. But I'm here, and I'm staying. Get used to it. She walked out before they could answer. Morning came cold and dark. Elena woke before dawn, dressed in the same clothes she'd worn yesterday, and went downstairs. The kitchen was still clean, small miracle. She got the stove going, found flour and milk, started making biscuits. By the time the sun came up, she had breakfast ready. Biscuits, eggs, fried pork, coffee so strong it could strip paint. Wade came down first. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the table. Sit, Elena said. He sat. Didn't say anything. Just ate like a man who'd forgotten food could taste good. The twins came down 5 minutes later. They saw the food and froze. "Not hungry," Mara said. "Sit down and eat," Wade said quietly. "We don't want—" "Mara, sit." She sat. Eli followed. They both stared at their plates like the food might be poisoned. Elena poured coffee for Wade, milk for the twins. Nobody spoke. The only sound was forks on plates and the wind outside rattling the windows. Finally, Eli said, "Biscuits are dry." "Then add butter," Elena said. "We're out of butter." "I'll make more today." Mara glared at her. "You know how to make butter?" "My mother taught me before she died." The words came out harder than Elena meant. The twins both looked up, surprised. Wade's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. "How old were you?" Mara asked quietly. 10. "What happened to your father?" Elena picked up her fork. "He hung himself 2 weeks ago. That's why I was on that platform. That's why I'm here." Silence filled the kitchen, like smoke. Mara looked down at her plate. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He made his choices." Elena stood up, started clearing dishes. "Now I'm making mine." The days that followed were brutal. Elena cleaned. That was her job, her purpose, the thing she could control when everything else was chaos. She scrubbed floors until her knees bled, washed windows until her arms shook, organized the pantry, the closets, the storage rooms full of things nobody had touched in years. The house fought her every step, pipes that leaked, doors that stuck, a roof that dripped when it rained. But slowly, inch by inch, she dragged it back from the edge of collapse. The twins watched her like wolves watching prey, waiting for her to fail, waiting for her to break. On the third day, Mara accidentally knocked over a bucket of wash water Elena had spent an hour hauling from the well. Elena just refilled it and kept working. On the fifth day, Eli hid her shoes. Elena walked barefoot until she found them buried in the garden. On the seventh day, they locked her out of the house in the middle of a snowstorm. Wade found her an hour later, sitting on the porch, lips blue, shaking so hard she couldn't stand. He carried her inside, wrapped her in blankets, and didn't say a word to the twins, just looked at them. That was enough. They didn't meet his eyes for 2 days after. But Elena didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't ask Wade to intervene. She just kept working. Because she'd learned something those first few days. Wade was right. The past didn't matter. Only what you did today. And today, Elena was going to survive. Mat. 2 weeks in, Elena discovered the ranch's real problem. She'd been doing inventory in the storage barn, counting supplies, checking what needed replacing, when she found the ledger. Someone had left it buried under old feed sacks, pages warped from moisture. She almost ignored it. But something made her pick it up. It was a record book. Cattle sales, timber contracts, equipment purchases. 3 years of transactions, written in careful handwriting that definitely wasn't Wade's. His wife's, Elena realized. This had been her job. She flipped through the pages, tracking numbers. Everything looked fine until about 18 months ago. Then the sales started dropping. Cattle went missing, just a few at first, then more. Timber shipments came up short. Equipment broke and wasn't replaced. The ranch was bleeding money, slow and steady. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the pattern. Every time something went wrong, it happened while Wade was away. A fence would break and cattle would wander. A shipment would get lost en route. Supplies would disappear from the storage sheds. It was too consistent to be random. Someone was sabotaging Mercer Ranch. Elena sat in the cold barn, holding the ledger, while snow fell outside and the pieces clicked together. This wasn't just a ranch struggling after a tragedy. This was a ranch under attack, and Wade either didn't know or didn't care. She needed to tell him. She found him in the stable checking a horse's injured leg. The animal was massive, a draft horse, easily 2,000 pounds of muscle and bad temper. But Wade handled it like it was a kitten, fingers gentle on the swollen joint. "We need to talk," Elena said. "Busy. It's important." He glanced at her, then back at the horse. "So's this. Brutus threw a shoe this morning, came down wrong. If this swells worse, we might lose him." "Someone's stealing from you." Wade's hand stopped moving. "What?" Elena held up the ledger. "I found this in the storage barn. Your wife kept records, good ones. And according to these, you've been losing cattle, timber, and supplies for the last 1.5 years. Too much to be accidents, too consistent to be random." Wade straightened slowly. He was a big man. And when he focused that attention on you, it felt like standing in front of a cliff. Let me see that. She handed it over, watched his face as he read. His jaw got tighter with each page. How did I miss this? He said quietly. You were busy, grieving, running a ranch with 20 men and 2 kids who... Elena stopped herself. Who hate me? Wade finished. He closed the ledger. You're right, this isn't random. Someone's been hitting us every time I'm away from the ranch. Probably figured I was too distracted to notice. Do you know who? Got suspicions. His voice went cold. Thornton. Owns the ranch east of here. Been trying to buy me out for years. Offered twice after my wife died. Said I couldn't handle this place alone. Can you prove it? No, but I can watch. He handed the ledger back to Elena. You keep this. Keep tracking everything that comes in and out. If something goes missing, I want to know immediately. That's not my job. I'm supposed to... That's... But she's sure. Your job is whatever I say it is. But his voice wasn't cruel, just tired. You found this. You understand numbers. And right now, I need someone I can trust watching my back. Can you do that? Elena looked at the ledger in her hands. This wasn't what she'd signed up for. She was supposed to clean, cook, maybe help with the kids. Not run a ranch's books, not investigate theft. But Wade was looking at her like she was more than a girl he'd bought off a platform. Like she mattered. I can do that, she said. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Good. That night, Elena sat in her room with the ledger spread across the bed, trying to make sense of 3 years of transactions by candlelight. Her eyes ached, her head pounded, but she kept going because Wade was counting on her. A knock on the door made her jump. It's me, Mara's voice said. Can I come in? Elena hesitated, then, door's open. Mara slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She wore a nightgown 2 sizes too big, probably an old one of her mother's. Her hair was loose, making her look younger than 12. What are you doing? She asked, looking at the papers. Ranch business. Father asked you to do that? Yes. Mara sat down on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the ledger. The other women never did ranch business. They just cooked and cleaned until we made them leave. I'm not the other women. I noticed. Mara picked at a thread on the blanket. Why do you care? This isn't your ranch. We're not your family. You're just here because of a contract. Elena set down her pen. You want the truth? Yes. I don't care. Not about the ranch. Not about your father. Not about you or your brother. She watched Mara's face fall and kept going. But I care about surviving. And right now, surviving means making this work. So I'm going to do the best job I can. Not because I love this place. Because the alternative is freezing to death in some ditch somewhere. Mara was quiet for a long moment. Then, that's honest. It's all I've got. The other women lied. Said they cared. Said they wanted to help. But they left as soon as things got hard. Mara looked at Elena. You won't leave? Can't. Contract. Contracts can be broken. Not by me. Elena went back to the ledger. I'm here for 7 years whether you like it or not. Might as well get used to it. Mara stood up, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. Elena? Yeah? My mother used to keep those books. She was good at it, better than father. Her voice went soft. He misses her. We all do. But I think he needs someone to help him, even if it's not her. Then she was gone. Elena sat alone in the candlelight, staring at the numbers that didn't add up, in a house full of people who didn't trust her, working for a man who'd bought her like livestock. And for the first time since her father died, she thought maybe, just maybe, she could do this. But the next morning, Wade gathered his ranch hands for a meeting. 20 men crowded into the barn, rough and weathered from years of frontier living. Elena stood in the back, holding the ledger, trying not to feel like an intruder. Wade didn't waste time. Someone's been stealing from us. Cattle, timber, supplies. Been going on for over a year. I was too damn blind to see it, but it stops now. The men shifted, muttering. One of them, a grizzled cowboy named Carson, spat tobacco juice. You sure it's theft? Could just be bad luck. Bad luck doesn't follow a pattern. Wade nodded to Elena. Show them. She stepped forward, hands shaking slightly. 20 pairs of eyes turned to her, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. The losses only happen when Mr. Mercer is away from the ranch, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. 3 months ago, he went to Ashford Station for supplies. That night, 15 head of cattle went missing. 6 weeks ago, he rode to the northern timber camp. A shipment of tools disappeared from the storage shed. 2 weeks ago— Who the hell is this? Carson interrupted, looking at Wade. Some girl you brought in to tell us how to do our jobs? She's the one who found the pattern, Wade said quietly, which is more than any of us did. She's a kid. She's right. Wade's voice went hard. And from now on, she's keeping the books. Anyone has a problem with that, there's the door. Nobody moved. Elena took a breath and continued. Whoever's doing this knows the ranch's schedule, knows when you're vulnerable. And they're smart enough to take just enough that you wouldn't notice right away. Thornton, one of the younger hands said, has to be. He's been circling this place like a vulture. Can't prove it, Wade said, but we can make it harder for him. I'm setting up a watch rotation. 2 men on the property at all times, even when I'm here. Carson, you organize it. Anyone sees something suspicious, they report to me or Elena immediately. Carson looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded. The meeting broke up. Men filed out, some of them glancing at Elena with new wariness. She'd just become something more than the help. She wasn't sure if that was better or worse. Wade walked over. You did good. They hate me. They're suspicious, different thing. He almost smiled. Give them time, prove you're worth trusting. They'll come around. And if they don't, then they can work somewhere else. He headed for the door, then stopped. Elena, thank you for caring enough to look. He left before she could tell him she didn't care, that this was just survival, that she was only doing what she had to do. But maybe that was enough. Winter hit hard. Snow piled 3 feet deep in the valley, turning the ranch into a frozen maze of white and dark timber. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in the pipes overnight. Elena woke each morning to ice on the inside of her window, breath misting in her room. But the house was warm. That was her doing. She'd learned to bank the fires just right, to keep the stoves burning through the night without wasting wood. She'd found extra blankets in storage, mended clothes, made sure the twins had thick socks and warm coats. Small things. Things nobody noticed until they weren't done. The twins were changing, slowly. Mara started helping in the kitchen without being asked. Eli stopped hiding Elena's things. They still didn't like her. She could see it in how they watched her, wary and waiting. But the war had shifted to an uneasy truce. Wade was gone more often than not. The cattle needed constant tending in winter, and the timber operation couldn't stop just because it was cold. Sometimes he'd be gone for 3 days straight, coming home exhausted and covered in frost, falling asleep at the dinner table before he finished eating. Elena started waiting up for him, making sure there was hot food, hot coffee, a warm fire. He never thanked her, just ate in silence, then went upstairs to sleep. But she noticed he started coming home earlier, spending more time in the house. One night, a blizzard rolled in so fast it caught half the ranch hands out in the pasture. Wade rode out to bring them back and didn't return until midnight. Elena heard the door open and went downstairs. He was frozen, literally. Ice caked his beard, his coat stiff with snow. His lips were blue. Jesus, Elena whispered, get inside now. She stripped off his coat, his gloves, sat him by the fire. His hands were so cold they'd gone white. Frostbite, maybe. She brought blankets, hot water, coffee, laced with whiskey. The men? She asked. Safe. His voice was raw. All of them. But it was close. She wrapped his hands in warm cloths, watching the color slowly return. He didn't pull away, just sat there, letting her help, too tired to do anything else. You didn't have to wait up, he said. Yes, I did. Why? Because someone needs to. He looked at her then, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. Not the girl from the auction block, not the help he'd hired, just Elena. You're stronger than I thought, he said quietly. Had to be. Didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. No. She met his eyes. They don't. You had a choice when you bought me. I didn't have a choice when I got sold. Your wife had a choice to marry you. Your kids had no choice about being born here. Some of us just survive what we're given. Wade was quiet for a long time. Then, my wife used to say something like that. Said the frontier doesn't ask permission, just takes what it wants and leaves you to deal with it. She was right. She usually was. His voice went soft, distant. Her name was Catherine. She died giving birth to a stillborn baby 3 years ago. Bled out before the doctor could get here. I was in town, buying supplies. Came home to find her dead, and the twins screaming. Elena's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. He pulled his hands back, flexing the fingers. After that, I didn't care about the ranch. Didn't care about much of anything. Just kept working because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant... He stopped. Meant remembering, Elena finished. Yeah. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the windows. You're doing her job now, Wade said. The books, the house, the kids, everything she used to do. You know that? Yes. Does it bother you? Elena thought about it. No, because I'm not trying to be her. I'm just trying to keep this place from falling apart. If that means doing what she did, fine. But I'm not her replacement. I know. Wade stood up, still unsteady. But you're something. Haven't figured out what yet. He went upstairs. Elena stayed by the fire, listening to the storm, wondering what the hell she was becoming. The theft got worse. Despite the watch rotation, things kept disappearing. Tools. Feed. One morning they found a section of fence torn down and 20 head of cattle missing. Carson tracked them as far as the eastern property line before the trail vanished. Thornton's land. Of course, Wade rode over there with 6 men ready for a fight. Came back empty-handed and furious. Thornton denied everything, showed paperwork proving he'd bought those cattle from a trader passing through. Legal, clean, impossible to dispute. He's covering his tracks, Elena said that night, looking through the updated ledger. And he's getting bolder. I know. Wade slammed his hand on the table. But I can't prove anything. Can't fight him without proof. Then we get proof. He looked at her. How? Elena thought about it. We set a trap. Make it look like you're leaving the ranch undefended. See who takes the bait. That's risky. Everything here is risky. Wade smiled, actually smiled, the first real one she'd seen. You know, Catherine would have liked you. She was sneaky too. I'm not sneaky. I'm practical. Same thing out here. They spent the next hour planning. Wade would announce a trip to the timber camp, make it public, take most of his men, but he'd actually leave a skeleton crew hidden around the ranch, watching. If Thornton made a move, they'd catch him. It was a good plan, but plans didn't account for twins with bad timing. Took back. 2 days before Wade was supposed to leave, Eli got sick. Started as a cough, turned into a fever by nightfall. Mara tried to hide it. Probably thought if Wade knew, he'd cancel the trip and they'd never catch Thornton. But Elena heard Eli coughing through the walls. She found him in his room, burning up, barely conscious. Mara sat beside him, crying quietly. How long has he been like this? Elena asked. Since this morning. And you didn't tell anyone? He said he was fine. Elena felt his forehead, hot as a coal. Get your father, now! Wade came running, took one look at Eli and went pale. Get the doctor. Doctor's in Ashford Station, Elena said. 3-hour ride in good weather. Storm's coming in. I don't care. Go. You go. I'll stay with him. Wade hesitated. She could see the war in his eyes. Duty to his son versus duty to his ranch. Finally, he nodded. Keep him cool. Make him drink water. If he gets worse, I'll handle it. He left at a gallop. Elena sent Mara to get water and cloths, then sat beside Eli. The boy was shaking, skin slick with sweat. His breathing sounded wrong, wet and rattling. You're going to be fine, she told him, even though she wasn't sure. Eli's eyes opened, glassy with fever. Don't let me die. You're not dying. My mother died. The baby died. Everyone dies. Not today. Elena wrung out a cloth, pressed it to his forehead. Today, you're going to fight. Understand? You're going to fight because that's what Mercers do. Mara came back with the water. Together, they worked through the night, cooling his fever, forcing him to drink, keeping him breathing. The storm hit around midnight, snow battering the windows. No sign of Wade or the doctor. By dawn, Eli was worse. His fever spiked so high Elena thought he might start convulsing. His breathing got shallower. Once he stopped entirely, and Elena had to shake him awake, terrified she'd lost him. "Where's Father?" Mara sobbed. "Storm probably slowed him down. What if he doesn't make it? What if he'll make it?" Elena said it with more confidence than she felt. Around noon, Wade finally burst through the door with the doctor, an old man named Pruitt who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He examined Eli quickly, efficiently. "Pneumonia," he said. "Needs medicine, needs rest." "I've got medicine in town," Wade said. "But we'd never make it there and back before—" "I have something." Pruitt pulled out a small bottle. "Not much, but enough for a few days. After that, you'll need to get more." He administered the medicine, gave instructions, and left as quickly as he'd come. Elena stayed with Eli while Wade paced the hallway like a caged animal. By evening, Eli's fever broke. He opened his eyes, looked at Elena, and said, "You stayed." "Of course I stayed." "The others didn't. When Mara got sick last year, the housekeeper left. Said she didn't want to catch it." Elena smoothed his hair back. "I'm not the others." Eli smiled weakly. "I noticed." Across the room, Mara was crying, not from fear this time, from relief. The trap for Thornton had to wait. Eli needed 2 weeks to recover, and by then, winter had locked down so hard that nobody was moving anywhere. Wade canceled the trip to the timber camp. The ranch went into survival mode, just keeping animals alive, keeping people fed, keeping the fires burning. Elena threw herself into it. She was up before dawn every morning, working until midnight, cooking, cleaning, managing supplies, tracking inventory. The ledger became her Bible. She knew every pound of flour, every head of cattle, every missing nail. And slowly, the ranch stabilized. It wasn't fixed, wasn't thriving, but it stopped bleeding. The books balanced. The thefts slowed, probably because Thornton couldn't move in the snow either. The house felt warmer, not just from the fires, but from something else, something that almost felt like home. The twins started calling her by name instead of girl or you. Small thing, but it mattered. Wade started talking to her, not just about ranch business, about everything. His plans for spring, his worries about money, his memories of Catherine that didn't hurt quite as much anymore. One night he said, "You know, when I bought you, I thought I was hiring help. Didn't expect—" He stopped. "Didn't expect what?" "Didn't expect you to care." Elena looked at him across the dinner table. The twins had gone to bed. The house was quiet. Outside, snow fell soft and steady. "I told you before," she said. "I don't care. I'm just surviving." "You're lying." "Maybe," he smiled. "Catherine used to lie like that too. Said she married me for the ranch, not for love. Took her 3 years to admit the truth." "What truth?" "That she cared, even when she didn't want to, even when it was easier not to." Wade stood up, started clearing plates. "You care, Elena, about this place, about the kids, maybe even about me. And that scares you because caring means it can hurt." Elena didn't answer, because he was right. And that terrified her more than anything. Spring came slowly, reluctantly, like the land didn't quite believe winter was done. Snow melted in patches. Mud replaced ice. The world turned from white to brown to the first fragile green. Elena stood on the porch one morning, watching the sun rise over the valley, and realized something. She'd survived. 4 months on Mercer Ranch, and she was still here, still standing. The twins didn't hate her anymore. Wade trusted her. The ranch was holding together. She'd survived. But surviving wasn't enough, not anymore. Because Wade had been right. She did care. About the ranch, about the kids, about the man who'd bought her freedom and given her something that almost felt like a life. And caring meant fighting for it, which meant finally dealing with Thornton. She found Wade in the barn, repairing tack. "The trap," she said. "We need to do it now, before the spring thaw opens up the roads and he can move freely again." Wade looked up. Eli just recovered. I'm not leaving them. You don't have to. I'll go. Absolutely not. Why not? You said you needed someone to watch your back, someone you trust. I'm here. I'm watching. Elena, if Thornton is behind this, he's dangerous. I'm not putting you in that situation. You already put me in this situation when you bought me. She crossed her arms. I've been running these books for months. I know this ranch better than anyone except you, and right now you need me out there more than you need me in here. Wade set down the leather he was working on. What are you proposing? I ride to Ashford Station. Make noise about how Mercer Ranch is struggling, how you're barely holding on. Plant the rumor that you're thinking of selling, then I come back and we wait. If Thornton thinks you're weak, he'll make a move, and when he does, we catch him. It's risky. Everything here is risky. Wade studied her for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. Tomorrow. You take Carson with you, and Elena, be careful. Thornton's a snake. Don't underestimate him. I won't. But as she walked away, Elena wondered if she was underestimating herself. 4 months ago, she'd been a girl on an auction block, terrified and powerless. Now she was planning to take down a man who'd been stealing from the most dangerous rancher in the territory. What the hell had she become? She didn't know, but she was about to find out. The ride to Ashford Station took 6 hours through mud so thick it nearly swallowed the horses whole. Elena sat straight in the saddle, trying to ignore the way her thighs screamed from hours of riding and the cold spring rain that soaked through her coat. Carson rode beside her, silent as a grave, chewing tobacco and spitting every few minutes like it was the only conversation he needed. They reached town just after noon. The main street was a river of brown sludge, buildings looking even more decrepit than Elena remembered. 4 months felt like 4 years. She'd been a different person the last time she stood here, broken, terrified, waiting to be sold. Now she was riding in on purpose, carrying a lie designed to destroy a man. Where first? Carson asked, the most words he'd spoken since they left the ranch. Saloon, Elena said. That's where the talk happens. Carson raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. They hitched the horses outside the Silver Dollar, a sagging building that smelled like stale beer and poor decisions even from the street. Inside was worse. Sawdust on the floor, tables sticky with spilled drinks, men hunched over cards and whiskey at 2 in the afternoon. The bartender looked up when they entered. His eyes went straight to Elena, narrowed. We don't serve women. Good thing I'm not drinking, Elena said. I'm looking for information. Information costs money. Carson dropped coins on the bar. The bartender swept them up, suddenly more hospitable. What kind of information? Elena leaned against the bar, keeping her voice just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I work for Wade Mercer, up at the mountain ranch. He sent me to find a buyer. The bartender's expression shifted. Buyer for what? The ranch. Whole operation. Cattle, land, timber rights, everything. The room got quiet. Men at the tables stopped talking, cards forgotten. Carson shot Elena a look, but kept his mouth shut. Mercer's selling? Someone asked from the corner. Elena turned. A thin man with rat-like features and nervous hands. He's considering it. Ranch has been struggling since his wife died. He can't manage it alone and the debts are piling up. He needs to sell before the bank takes it. How much debt? The bartender asked. Enough that he's desperate. Elena straightened. If you know anyone interested in mountain property, tell them to contact Mercer directly. He's accepting offers. She walked out before anyone could ask more questions. Carson followed, waiting until they were outside to speak. That was a hell of a lie. That was the point. Thornton's spies were in there, you know that, right? I'm counting on it. They rode to the general store next, the boarding house after that. At each stop, Elena repeated the same story. Wade Mercer was selling, the ranch was failing, anyone interested should make an offer soon. By the time they left Ashford Station, the rumor would be spreading like wildfire. The ride back was quieter. Carson kept glancing at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. What? Elena finally asked. Just thinking. When you first showed up, I figured you'd last maybe a week. Thought the twins would eat you alive or the work would break you. He spat tobacco juice into the mud. But you're tougher than you look. Had to be. Most people don't got a choice about being tough. They just are or they aren't. Then I guess I didn't have a choice. Carson almost smiled. Wade made a good investment. $600 don't seem so crazy now. Elena didn't answer, because she was thinking about what she'd become over the past 4 months. The girl on that auction block had been afraid of everything. Afraid of men, afraid of the frontier, afraid of her own shadow. But that girl was gone. The woman riding through this mud had learned to fight back, had learned that survival meant taking risks, telling lies, standing up even when your knees wanted to buckle. She'd become someone who could look a bartender in the eye and lie without flinching, someone who could plan a trap that might get people killed, someone dangerous. And the scariest part was how natural it felt. They reached the ranch just before dark. Wade met them at the stable, worry etched into every line of his face. How'd it go? Hook's baited, Elena said, sliding off her horse. Her legs nearly gave out when she hit the ground. Wade caught her elbow, steadied her. By morning, every gossip in the territory will know you're selling. And if Thornton doesn't bite? He'll bite. Men like him can't resist easy prey. Wade studied her face. You look exhausted. I'm fine. You're swaying. Carson, take care of the horses. Elena inside, now. She wanted to argue, but her body agreed with Wade. She stumbled into the house, made it as far as the kitchen before her legs finally quit. Wade caught her before she hit the floor, lifted her like she weighed nothing. I can walk, she protested. Clearly. But he didn't put her down, just carried her upstairs to her room, set her on the bed. When's the last time you ate? Elena tried to remember. Breakfast? That was 14 hours ago. Wade's jaw tightened. Stay here. He came back 10 minutes later with bread, cheese, and soup so hot it burned her tongue. She ate while he watched, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd forgotten how to relax. The twins? She asked between bites. Asleep. Eli's fever stayed down. Mara made dinner without burning anything. House is still standing. Miracles do happen. Yeah. Wade sat down in the chair by her window. Elena, what you did today, riding into town, spreading that story, that took guts, but it also put a target on your back. If Thornton realizes you're the one running the books, tracking his thefts, then I'll deal with it. You're 18 years old. I'm aware. You shouldn't have to deal with men like Thornton. You should be... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. Should be what? Safe? Married to some nice farmer? Having babies? Elena set down the bowl. That life wasn't an option for me. This is what I got. And I'm making it work. Wade looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, something she couldn't read. You remind me of her, Catherine. She was young when we met, 20. Everyone said she was too soft for the frontier, but she proved them all wrong. Ran this ranch better than I ever could. I'm not her. I know, but you've got the same fire, same refusal to quit. He stood up. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we set the trap. And Elena, thank you for doing this. He left before she could say she wasn't doing it for thanks, wasn't doing it for him. She was doing it because this ranch had become hers too. Not legally, not officially, but in the way that mattered. She'd bled for it, fought for it, nearly frozen to death for it, and nobody was going to take it without a fight. She fell asleep still wearing her muddy clothes, too tired to care. The next 3 days crawled by like wounded animals. Wade made a big show of preparing for a cattle drive to the eastern market, loading wagons, organizing men, making noise. But half the crew stayed behind, hidden in the barns and tree lines, watching. Elena kept the house running, cooking, cleaning, pretending everything was normal. The twins knew something was happening. They weren't stupid, but they didn't ask questions. Eli was still weak from his illness, spending most days by the fire with books. Mara shadowed Elena, learning to make bread, mend clothes, do the 1,000 small tasks that kept a household alive. Why are you teaching me this? Mara asked one afternoon, elbow deep in dishwater. Because you need to know. I'm 12, Wes. Your mother was running this ranch at 20. Better you learn now than fumble later. Mara was quiet for a moment. Then, do you think Father's going to marry you? Elena's hands stopped moving. What? You do everything Mother used to do. You take care of us. You take care of him. Everyone in town probably thinks you're already married. We're not, but you could be, if he asked. Elena turned to look at the girl. Mara's face was carefully neutral, but her hands were clenched tight on the dish rag. Would that bother you? I don't know. Mara's voice went small. Part of me hates the idea because it means Mother's really gone, really replaced. But part of me, she trailed off. Part of you wants someone to stay, Elena finished quietly. Mara nodded, blinking hard. The other women left, and I know we made it hard. We were awful to them, but they still left. And every time someone left, it felt like losing Mother all over again. Elena dried her hands, sat down beside Mara. I'm not leaving, contract or no contract. I'm here. But what if Father doesn't matter what he wants. This is my home now too, and I protect what's mine. Mara looked at her with eyes too old for 12. You really mean that? Yes. Good. Mara went back to the dishes. Because Eli and I decided we like you. Took us a while, but we do. It wasn't a declaration of love. Wasn't even close to affection. But coming from Mara, it was everything. That night, Wade came to Elena's room after the twins went to bed. He knocked softly, waited for permission. Come in. He stood in the doorway, hat in hands, looking uncomfortable. Thornton sent word. He wants to meet tomorrow. Discuss terms for buying the ranch. Elena's heart kicked. He took the bait. Looks like it. Meetings at his property, noon. You're not going alone. I'm taking Carson and 5 others. I'm coming too. Wade's expression hardened. No. This was my plan. I'm seeing it through. It's too dangerous. If things go wrong, you'll need someone there who knows exactly what he's stolen and when. Someone who can prove it. Elena stood up, crossed her arms. I'm coming, Wade. You can argue, but you won't win. They stared at each other. Wade's jaw worked like he was chewing rocks. Finally, he exhaled. You're as stubborn as Catherine. I know, you keep saying that. Because it's true. But there was something else in his voice now. Something that made Elena's chest tight. Fine. You come. But you stay back. You stay safe. If shooting starts, I know how to duck. Wade almost smiled. Yeah, I bet you do. He left. Elena sat back down on her bed, hands shaking slightly. Tomorrow, they'd confront Thornton. Tomorrow, everything could fall apart or finally come together. Tomorrow, she'd find out if she was as tough as she pretended to be. She barely slept. Morning came cold and gray. Elena dressed in her most practical clothes, heavy skirt, wool shirt, boots she'd reinforced with leather Carson had given her. She braided her hair tight, tied it back, checked her reflection in the small mirror and barely recognized herself. 4 months had changed more than her circumstances. Her face was thinner, harder. Eyes that had been frightened now looked calculating. She'd become someone her father wouldn't recognize. Good. Downstairs, Wade was giving final instructions to the men staying behind. Anything happens, you take care of the twins. Don't let them out of your sight. Yes, sir. Mara and Eli stood by the fireplace, watching with identical worried expressions. Elena walked over, crouched down to their level. We'll be back before dinner, she said. What if you're not? Eli's voice cracked. Then you eat without us. There's stew in the pot. Don't burn the house down. Mara grabbed Elena's hand suddenly, held tight. Be careful. Always am. I'm serious. Father already lost one. She stopped, couldn't finish. Elena squeezed back. I know, but I'm not going anywhere, I promise. It was a promise she had no right to make, but she made it anyway. The ride to Thornton's ranch took 2 hours. 7 of them, Wade, Elena, Carson, and 4 hands who looked like they'd been in more than a few fights. They rode in silence, weapons ready, eyes scanning the tree line. This was Thornton's territory. If he wanted to ambush them, this was where he'd do it. But nothing happened. They reached the property without incident. Thornton's ranch was bigger than Mercer's, newer, better maintained. White-painted fences, barns with intact roofs, a house that looked like it belonged in a city somewhere. Money. Lots of it. Built on what? Legitimate business or years of stealing from neighbors? Thornton himself waited on his porch. Mid-40s, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. 2 men flanked him, hired guns, from the look of them. Wade Mercer, Thornton called out. Heard you were looking to sell. Figured we should talk. Wade dismounted. Elena started to follow, but Carson caught her arm. Stay here. Let him handle it. She wanted to argue, but Wade shot her a look that said, listen to Carson, so she stayed mounted, hands tight on the reins. Wade walked up to the porch. The two groups of men watched each other like wolves sizing up prey. Let's talk inside, Thornton said. Just the two of us, man to man. I'd rather talk out here. Suit yourself. Thornton leaned against the porch rail, all casual confidence. So, you're selling. How much? Depends on what you're offering. How about I make this simple? I'll take the whole operation off your hands. Ranch, cattle, land. $30,000. It was an insult. The ranch was worth 3 times that, even struggling. Wade's expression didn't change. You think I'm that desperate? I think you're drowning. Heard your books don't balance. Heard you've been losing stock. Heard the banks circling. Thornton's smile widened. 30,000 is generous considering. Considering what? Considering how much more you stand to lose if you refuse. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Wade's hands flexed. You threatening me, Thornton? Just stating facts. Frontier's a dangerous place. Accidents happen. Cattle wander off. Fires start. People get hurt. Thornton glanced toward Elena, especially people who don't belong here. Wade's whole body went rigid. You keep your eyes off her. Touchy. Thornton laughed. She that new housekeeper I heard about? Pretty thing. What did you pay? Heard it was 600. That true? Elena's skin crawled. She could feel his gaze on her like grease. This conversation's done, Wade said, voice gone cold and flat. I'm not selling. Not to you. Not for any price. That's a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Wade turned to leave. Thornton's voice stopped him. You sure about that? Because I've been patient, Wade. Waited 3 years for you to fail on your own. But patience has limits. Wade turned back slowly. What did you just say? You heard me. 3 years I've been waiting for you to crumble. 3 years of watching you struggle. And still you hang on. Still you fight. Thornton's mask slipped, showing the ugliness underneath. But everyone breaks eventually. Your wife did. You will too. Something snapped in Wade's eyes. He was moving before Elena could scream a warning, up the porch steps, hands around Thornton's throat. Thornton's guards reached for their guns. Wade's men drew faster. Wade, don't! Elena shouted, but Wade wasn't listening. What did you do to Catherine? Thornton choked, face going red. Nothing, just watched her bleed. You were there? The day she died? Rode past, heard the screaming, could have gotten the doctor faster, chose not to. Thornton grinned even as Wade's hands tightened. Figured nature would solve my problem for me. Elena's blood turned to ice. He'd let Catherine die, deliberately, just to weaken Wade. Wade roared and slammed Thornton against the porch wall. Wood cracked. Thornton's men raised their pistols. Carson and the others aimed back. Wade! Elena jumped off her horse, ran forward. Wade, stop! He's not worth hanging for. Wade's hands shook. For a terrible moment, Elena thought he'd actually kill Thornton right there. End it. End everything. But then his grip loosened. He shoved Thornton away, sending him sprawling. You're done, Wade said, breathing hard. I'm reporting this to the territorial marshal. You admitted to letting someone die, to sabotaging my ranch. You're finished. Thornton laughed, wiping blood from his mouth. You think anyone will believe you? It's your word against mine, and I've got the sheriff in my pocket. Maybe, but I've got records. Elena stepped forward, pulling the ledger from her saddlebag. Every theft, every loss, every time it happened while Wade was away. All documented, dated, with witness statements. She was bluffing about the witness statements, but Thornton didn't know that. His face went pale. That proves nothing. It proves a pattern, and patterns are enough to start investigations, enough to make people ask questions. Elena walked closer, keeping her voice steady even though her heart hammered. You made a mistake, Mr. Thornton. You underestimated Wade, and you underestimated me. Thornton's eyes narrowed. You're just a bought girl. Nobody... I'm the person who caught you. Elena held up the ledger. This goes to the marshal tomorrow, and then we'll see who the territory believes. For a long moment, nobody moved, guns still drawn, tension thick enough to choke on. Then Thornton laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Get off my property. Gladly. Wade grabbed Elena's arm, pulled her back toward the horses. But this isn't over, Thornton. You come near my ranch, my family, or anyone working for me, and I'll kill you myself. Law or no law. They mounted up, rode out, didn't run, because running would show fear. But Elena could feel Thornton's eyes burning into her back the entire way. They made it a mile before Wade finally stopped, climbed off his horse, and punched a tree so hard his knuckles split. Wade, he let her die. Wade's voice cracked. He was there. He could have helped, and he let her bleed out because it was convenient. Elena dismounted, walked over. I know. I should have killed him. Probably. But then you'd hang, and the twins would lose you too, so you made the right choice. Wade looked at her, eyes raw with pain. She died alone, scared, in agony, and he watched. I know. I'm going to destroy him, take everything he has, make him feel... We will, Elena interrupted, together, the legal way. We'll make sure he pays. Wade pulled her into a sudden crushing hug. Elena froze, then slowly wrapped her arms around him. He was shaking. This big, hard man who'd survived years on the frontier, shaking like a leaf. Thank you, he whispered against her hair, for stopping me, for being there, for... He couldn't finish. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. He pulled back, looked at her. You saved me today. Again. You keep saving me. Someone has to. He almost laughed. Then his expression shifted, softened into something Elena couldn't read. His hand came up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. For one terrible, wonderful moment, she thought he might kiss her. But Carson cleared his throat loudly. We should move. Don't want to be on Thornton's land after dark. The moment broke. Wade stepped back, nodded. Right, let's go. They rode home in silence, but something had changed between them, something neither of them was ready to name. When they reached the ranch, the twins ran out to meet them. Mara threw herself at Wade, and Eli grabbed Elena's hand, holding tight. You came back, Eli said. Told you I would. I know, but I was still scared. Elena crouched down, met his eyes. I keep my promises, Eli. Always. That night, Wade called everyone together. All the ranch hands, the twins, Elena. They gathered in the main barn, standing in a circle while Wade laid out what happened. Thornton admitted to sabotaging us, to letting my wife die. We have enough to take to the marshal, but it won't be easy. He's got money, got influence. We're going to have to fight. We've been fighting for 3 years, Carson said. What's different now? Wade looked at Elena. Now we've got proof, and now we fight back. The men stirred, muttering. Finally, one of the older hands, a grizzled man named Dutch, spoke up. What do you need from us? Eyes open, weapons ready. Anyone sees Thornton or his men near our property, you report it immediately. We document everything, every threat, every suspicious incident, build a case so solid the marshal can't ignore it. And if Thornton doesn't wait for the law? Dutch asked. If he comes at us direct? Then we defend ourselves. But we do it legal. We do it right. No vigilante justice, no revenge killings. We're better than that. Elena watched the men's faces. Some looked convinced, some looked skeptical, but they all nodded. Because Wade Mercer commanded loyalty even when he was falling apart. The meeting broke up. The twins went to bed. The hands returned to their quarters. Elena started cleaning up the barn, putting away tools. Wade stayed behind. You disagree with something I said? It wasn't a question. Elena set down the pitchfork she'd been holding. I think you're being optimistic. Thornton's not going to play fair. And when he comes, not if, when, legal won't matter. So what do you suggest? Be ready for war, real war, not the polite kind. Wade's expression darkened. I don't want the twins growing up in a war zone. Then you should have sold and moved somewhere safe. But you didn't. You stayed, which means war finds you whether you want it or not. Elena faced him squarely. I've been keeping those books for months. I know what we're up against. Thornton has more money, more men, more influence. The only advantage we have is that we're willing to do whatever it takes to survive. So the question isn't whether we fight dirty, it's how dirty we're willing to get. Wade stared at her. When did you get so hard? When I had to, same as everyone else out here. He reached out, took her hand. His palm was rough, scarred, warm. I don't want you getting hurt because of my mistakes. Too late. I'm already hurt, already scarred. Might as well make it count for something. Wade pulled her closer. This time, there was no Carson to interrupt. No twins to walk in. Just the two of them in a barn that smelled like hay and horse, standing close enough that Elena could feel his heartbeat. Elena, he said quietly, I don't know when this happened, but somewhere along the way you stopped being the help, stopped being an obligation. You became, don't, she put a hand on his chest, don't say something we can't take back. Why not? Because I'm still bound to you by contract, still here because I have to be. And if you say what I think you're going to say, it changes everything. Maybe everything needs to change. He kissed her, slow, careful, like he was afraid she'd break. Elena froze for half a second, then kissed him back. 4 months of tension, fear, trust, and something that felt dangerously like love poured into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. I'm not sorry, he said. You should be. This complicates everything. Everything was already complicated. Elena laughed despite herself. True. They stood there for another moment, then Wade stepped back. We should go inside. Early day tomorrow. Wade, I know. We'll talk about this. Later. When we're not about to go to war with the most powerful man in the territory. He smiled, a real smile this time. But Elena, I meant what I said. You're not just the help anymore. You're family. He left before she could answer. Elena stood alone in the barn, fingers touching her lips, wondering what the hell she'd just done, and whether it was the smartest or stupidest decision of her life. The next week passed in tense preparation. Wade rode to the territorial marshal's office, 3 days' journey, to file formal complaints. Carson organized watch rotations. Elena drilled the twins on what to do if trouble came. Hide in the root cellar, stay quiet, don't come out until someone they trusted called for them. This is scary, Mara said during one of the drills. I know. Are we going to die? Elena looked at the 12-year-old girl who'd gone from hating her to depending on her in 4 short months. Not if I have anything to say about it. But you might not. Then we fight anyway, because giving up isn't an option. Eli appeared in the doorway. Father's back. They ran upstairs. Wade stood in the kitchen, covered in road dust, looking exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. Marshall's opening an investigation, he said. Said the ledger was enough to warrant questions. He'll be sending a deputy out within the month to interview witnesses. A month? Elena's heart sank. That's too long. Thornton will know we filed. He'll make a move before then. I know. That's why we're ready. Wade looked at Carson. Double the watch. No one goes anywhere alone. Weapons loaded and accessible. Yes, sir. The attack came 5 days later. It was just after midnight when Elena woke to the smell of smoke. She was out of bed and running before her mind fully caught up. Downstairs, Wade was already moving, pulling on boots, grabbing his rifle. The east barn, he said. It's on fire. They ran outside. Flames leaped 50 feet into the night sky, consuming the barn that held half their winter feed. Men were already forming bucket lines, desperately trying to save what they could. Thornton? Elena asked. Who else? Wade handed her a bucket. Help them. I'm going to check the other buildings. She joined the line, passing water until her arms screamed. The heat was incredible. The smoke choked her, but they kept fighting, because stopping meant losing everything. It took 3 hours to put out the fire. When the sun finally rose, the east barn was gone. Just charred wood and ash. 2 horses had died in their stalls. Half the feed was destroyed. The men stood around looking stunned, exhausted, angry. Wade's face could have been carved from stone. Check the perimeter. Look for tracks, signs of forced entry. Anything. Carson found it. Boot prints leading away from the barn. Lamp oil splashed on the outside walls. This wasn't an accident. This was arson. This was war. We're reporting this, Elena said. More evidence for the marshal. Evidence won't bring back what we lost. Wade's voice was flat. We just lost months of feed. Can't replace it before winter, which means we'll have to sell cattle early, at a loss. Exactly what Thornton wants. So we don't sell. Elena, be realistic. We can't feed what we can't afford to keep. Then we find another way. We always find another way. But for the first time since she'd arrived, Wade looked defeated. Maybe there isn't another way. Maybe he wins. No. Elena grabbed his arm, forced him to look at her. He doesn't win. Not while we're still breathing. You hear me? Wade stared at her. Then something rekindled behind his eyes. Not hope, exactly, but fight. What do you suggest? We hit back. Not with fire. With exposure. We make so much noise that Thornton can't hide. We go to every ranch in the territory, tell them what he did, build alliances, make him the outcast. That's risky. Some of those ranchers are his friends. Then we find out who our real friends are. Wade considered it, finally nodded. All right, we try it your way. But Elena, if this doesn't work, it will work. It has to. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena and Wade rode to every ranch within 50 miles. They showed the ledger, explained the pattern, detailed Thornton's threats. Some ranchers listened, some didn't. But slowly, support began building. Turned out Thornton had been pulling similar tricks on other small operations. Nothing provable, nothing organized. But enough that people were angry. Enough that when Wade called a meeting of all the independent ranchers, 40 men showed up. They met in Ashford Station, in the same space where Elena had been sold 5 months earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her. Wade stood in front of the group. Most of you know me, know my ranch, know I'm not one for asking help. But this isn't about me anymore. It's about all of us. Thornton's been operating like he owns this territory, taking what he wants, destroying what he can't take, and the law's too slow to stop him. What are you proposing? Someone asked. Alliance. We watch each other's backs, share resources, document everything suspicious, make it clear that we're not fighting alone anymore. And if Thornton doesn't care? If he comes anyway? Wade's expression hardened. Then we defend ourselves. Together. The vote was unanimous. 40 ranchers, small and struggling but stubborn as hell, joined forces against the biggest landowner in the region. Thornton had the money, but they had the numbers. The news reached Thornton within a day. Elena knew because 2 of his men rode up to Mercer Ranch that evening, carrying a message. Wade read it aloud. Back off or face consequences you can't imagine. Last warning. He crumpled the paper. Tell Thornton he can take his warning and shove it. We're not backing down. The men rode away. Elena watched them go, stomach tight with dread. This is it, she said quietly. The real fight starts now. Wade put a hand on her shoulder. You scared? Terrified? Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He turned to face her. Elena, if this goes bad, if things fall apart, I need you to take the twins and run. Promise me. I'm not leaving you. Promise me. She looked into his eyes and saw he meant it, saw he'd sacrifice everything to keep his children safe, to keep her safe. I promise, she lied, because she'd already made a different promise to herself. She'd fight for this ranch, this family, this man who'd bought her freedom and given her something worth dying for. She'd fight until there was nothing left to fight with. And if Thornton wanted war, he'd get one. The war Thornton promised arrived not with fire this time, but with silence. 3 days passed after his warning with nothing. No attacks, no threats, no sign of his men anywhere near Mercer Ranch. It was the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl, the kind that said something worse was coming. Wade paced the house like a caged animal. Elena watched him wear tracks into the floor, while she tried to focus on the ledger, tried to make their dwindling numbers look less catastrophic than they were. Losing the barn had cost them more than feed. It had cost them momentum, confidence, the illusion that they could actually win this fight. He's planning something, Wade said for the 10th time that hour. I know. Something big. He wouldn't go quiet unless... I know, Wade. He stopped pacing, looked at her. Sorry, I'm making you crazy. Little bit. Elena set down her pen. But I understand. Waiting is worse than fighting. At least when you're fighting, you know where you stand. He moved to the window, stared out at the darkening sky. Storm's coming. Big one, from the look of those clouds. Elena joined him. The western horizon was black, clouds rolling in like something alive and angry. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in the last hour. How long do we have? Maybe until morning, maybe less. Wade's jaw tightened. I need to get the cattle moved to the lower pastures. If they're caught up high when the snow hits, we'll lose half of them. How long will that take? 2 days? Maybe 3, depending on how fast the storm moves. Elena's stomach dropped. You can't go. Not now. Not with Thornton. I don't have a choice. Those cattle are all we have left. We lose them. The ranch is finished. Thornton wins by default. Wade turned to face her. Carson and 12 men will stay here. That's more than enough to defend the place. You'll be safe. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you out there alone if Thornton decides. He won't make a move during a blizzard. Too risky. Even he's not that crazy. But Elena heard the doubt in his voice. Thornton was exactly that crazy. They both knew it. Wade reached out, touched her face. 5 months ago, she would have flinched. Now she leaned into his hand, let herself take comfort from this man who'd somehow become more than her employer, more than the person who owned her contract. I'll be back before you know it, he said quietly. You better be, because if you die out there, I'm going to be really annoyed. He smiled despite everything. Can't have that. He kissed her, quick, fierce, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her mouth against his. Then he was grabbing his coat, his rifle, shouting orders to the men who'd ride out with him. Elena stood at the window and watched them leave. 14 riders disappearing into the gathering storm, taking half the ranch's defenses with them. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Behind her, Mara's voice said, He'll come back. He always does. Elena turned. Both twins stood in the doorway, looking smaller than usual, scared. Of course he will, Elena said, making her voice confident even though her chest was tight with dread. Your father survived worse storms than this. But what if Thornton? Then we handle it. That's what we do. We handle things. Elena forced herself to move, to be practical, to focus on what she could control. Come on, let's make sure the house is ready. Storm like this, we might lose power. Need to get candles ready, extra wood for the fires, food we can prepare without the stove if we have to. The twins followed her, grateful for something to do besides worry. They spent the next few hours preparing, filling water buckets, stacking firewood, pulling out extra blankets. Carson came by twice to check on them, each time looking more concerned about the darkening sky. Never seen clouds move that fast, he muttered. Storm's going to be a monster. Can you get word to Wade? Tell him to come back? Carson shook his head. He's too far out by now. And he's right. Those cattle have to be moved. We just gotta trust he knows what he's doing. Trust. Elena was getting real tired of having to trust the frontier not to kill everyone she cared about. That night, the first snow started falling. Not the gentle kind that dusted the ground prettily. This was violent, angry snow that came sideways in the wind, piling up so fast you could watch it accumulate. By midnight, there was a foot on the ground. By dawn, 3 feet. Elena stood at the kitchen window, watching the world turn white, and tried not to imagine Wade frozen somewhere in the mountains. The twins came downstairs looking pale. Is father okay? Eli asked. He's fine. Probably holed up somewhere waiting it out. But what if? No what ifs. He's fine. Elena turned from the window. Now come eat. Storm or no storm, you still need breakfast. She made oatmeal, strong coffee, tried to pretend everything was normal. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing. The house creaked and groaned under the assault. Snow piled against the windows until they could barely see out. Around noon, Mara started coughing. Just once at first, then twice, then continuously, her face flushing red with the effort. Elena's blood went cold. Mara, you okay? Fine, just a tickle in my throat. But by evening, Mara was burning up with fever, and Eli was coughing too. Elena felt like someone had punched her in the chest. Not again. Not both of them. Not now, with Wade gone and the storm raging and the doctor 3 hours away on a good day. She got them into bed, brought cool cloths, made them drink water even when they protested, but the fever kept climbing. Mara's breathing got labored. Eli started shaking so hard his teeth rattled. Carson came to check on them, took one look at the twins, and went gray. That's bad. I know. They need medicine, real medicine, not just home remedies. I know that too, but in case you haven't noticed, there's a blizzard outside. How long until it passes? Could be days. Carson swore viciously. We got anything here? Any supplies? Elena thought of the cabinet Wade kept locked in his room. Medicine he'd bought after Eli's last illness. She ran upstairs, found the key, opened it with shaking hands. Empty. They'd used everything during Eli's pneumonia. There was nothing left. She wanted to scream, wanted to put her fist through a wall, wanted to rage at the universe for being this cruel. Instead, she went back downstairs, face calm, and told Carson, "We need to get the doctor." "You can't be serious. Nobody can ride in this." "Then nobody dies in this either, but we don't have a choice." "Elena, the roads are gone. Visibility is maybe 10 feet. Temperatures dropped so low your spit freezes before it hits the ground. You'd be dead inside an hour. Maybe. But the twins will definitely be dead if we do nothing." She looked at the stairs where Mara and Eli lay dying. "They're 12 years old, Carson. Wade's whole world. I'm not letting them go without a fight." Carson stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You really gonna try this?" "Yes." "Then you're crazier than Wade, but—" He stopped, shook his head. "But you might also be the bravest damn fool I've ever met. What do you need?" "Fastest horse, warmest coat, and someone to watch the twins while I'm gone." "You're not going alone." "Yes, I am. You're needed here. If Thornton shows up while everyone's gone, someone has to defend this place. And if you die out there, then you tell Wade I tried, and you make sure he doesn't do anything stupid to get himself killed avenging me." Carson looked at her for a long moment. Then he grabbed her arm, pulled her close. "Listen to me. You follow the main road. Don't try shortcuts. You'll get lost and die. Stay on the horse no matter what. And if you start feeling warm, if you start wanting to sleep, you fight it. That's your body shutting down. You fight it." "Got it. I mean it, girl. You don't come back, those kids upstairs will never forgive themselves. And Wade—" He stopped. "Wade won't survive losing another person he loves." Elena's throat tightened. "He doesn't." "Yes, he does. And you know it. So you come back. Hear me?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. 20 minutes later, Elena was on Wade's fastest horse, a mare named Thunder who'd carried him through worse than this. She wore every piece of warm clothing they could find. Wool pants under her skirt, 3 shirts, Wade's heavy coat, a scarf wrapped so tight around her face she could barely breathe. Carson had tied a rope around her waist, attached the other end to the saddle. "If you fall off, the horse will drag you," he explained. "Better than freezing alone in a ditch." Comforting thought. Elena looked back at the house one last time. Warm light glowed in the windows. Inside, 2 children were dying. Outside, the storm wanted to kill her. Pretty standard day on the frontier. She kicked Thunder's flanks. The mare lunged forward into the blizzard, and the world disappeared into white chaos. The cold hit like a physical blow. Elena gasped, the air so frigid it burned her lungs. Snow pelted her face, stinging like needles. The wind tried to tear her from the saddle. She hunched low, held tight to the reins, and let Thunder pick the way. 10 minutes in, Elena lost all sense of direction. Everything looked the same. White above, white below, white in every direction. The road had vanished under snowdrifts taller than her horse. Trees appeared like ghosts, then disappeared again. Several times, Thunder stumbled in hidden holes, nearly throwing Elena off. Her hands were already going numb despite the gloves. Her face felt like someone was holding it against ice. The cold seeped through her clothes, finding every gap, every opening, turning her body into something frozen and clumsy. Keep going. Just keep going. She tried counting Thunder's steps to mark time, but lost track after 500. Tried singing to keep herself awake, but her lips were too numb to form words. Tried thinking about the twins, about Wade, about anything that would keep her focused on why she was doing this insane thing. Thunder kept walking. The mare was tougher than Elena, smarter than Elena, more suited to this hell than any human. Elena just held on and tried not to fall. At some point, 30 minutes in? An hour? She couldn't tell. Thunder stopped walking. Elena looked up through frozen eyelashes and saw nothing, just white. The horse was refusing to move forward. "Come on," Elena said, voice slurred from cold. "Keep going." Thunder didn't move. Elena kicked her flanks. Nothing. The mare just stood there, head down against the wind. Then Elena saw why. They'd reached a cliff edge. Not a big one. Maybe a 20-foot drop into a ravine, but enough to kill them if Thunder had kept walking. The road must have turned, and Elena had missed it, had nearly ridden them both off a ledge. "Okay," Elena whispered to the horse. "Okay. You're smarter than me. Lead the way." She loosened the reins, let Thunder backtrack, find the road again. The mare seemed to understand. She turned, picking carefully through the drifts, finding solid ground by instinct or luck or whatever kept horses alive when humans would die. They kept going. Elena's sense of time broke completely. There was only now, this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. The cold was everything. It filled her body, her mind, turned her thoughts slow and stupid. She caught herself nodding off twice, jerked awake only when Thunder stumbled. Stay awake. Stay awake. Stay awake. But it was so hard. Her body wanted to sleep, wanted to curl up in the snow and let the cold take her. It would be easy, painless. Just close your eyes and drift away. No. The twins needed her. Wade needed her. She'd promised she'd come back. She forced her eyes open, forced herself to sit upright, forced her frozen hands to hold the reins even though she couldn't feel them anymore. Thunder walked on. When Elena finally saw lights through the snow, she thought she was hallucinating, but the lights didn't disappear. They got brighter, closer. Buildings materialized from the white, Ashford station. She'd made it. Elena tried to dismount and discovered her legs didn't work. She simply fell off Thunder, hit the frozen ground hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. For several seconds, she just lay there, gasping, unable to move. Then hands grabbed her. Voices shouted. Someone was dragging her toward warmth. "The doctor," Elena managed through numb lips. "Need the doctor. Kid's dying." Jesus Christ, is that the Mercer girl? Get Pruitt, now. Everything blurred after that. Warmth that hurt worse than the cold. Hands removing her frozen clothes. Voices arguing about whether she'd lose fingers to frostbite. Someone forcing hot liquid down her throat. Then Dr. Pruitt was there, old and grumpy and alive. "You rode through that storm? Are you insane?" "Yes," Elena said. Her voice sounded wrong, slurred and distant. "The twins, fever, can't breathe, need medicine." "They'll need more than medicine. They'll need me there." "Then come, please." Pruitt looked at her, then at the window where snow still fell in sheets. "We'll never make it back tonight." "We have to. They're dying. And we'll be dying too if we try to ride in this." Elena tried to sit up. The room spun violently. "I'm going back, with or without you." "The hell you are. You can barely stand. Watch me." She pushed herself upright. Her legs buckled immediately. Strong hands caught her. The bartender from the saloon, the same one who'd listened to her lies about Wade selling the ranch. "Easy now. You're in no shape to ride anywhere." "I made a promise. Promises don't mean much when you're dead." Elena looked around the room. A dozen faces stared back, townspeople who'd probably gossiped about her, judged her, dismissed her as just another bought girl trying to survive. But right now, some of them looked concerned. Some even looked impressed. "Those kids are dying," Elena said to all of them. "Wade Mercer's children. They're 12 years old and they're dying, and I'm the only chance they have. So I'm going back. Dr. Pruitt can come or not. But I'm going." Silence filled the saloon. Then Pruitt sighed heavily. "Fine. But we wait until first light. Storm should ease by then." "We ride out in this darkness. We're both corpses." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to scream that they didn't have time to wait, but her body was shutting down, shaking so hard her teeth rattled, and she knew Pruitt was right. They'd never survive the ride back in her current condition. "First light," she agreed. "But the second it's safe. The second it's safe, we ride. Now someone get this fool girl some real clothes and hot food before she freezes to death in my saloon." They gave her a room above the saloon, tiny, cold, but better than outside. Elena lay under 3 blankets, still shaking, and tried not to think about what was happening at the ranch. Were the twins worse? Were they already gone? Had Wade made it back to find his children dead and Elena missing? She didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Just lay there counting seconds until dawn. When the first gray light finally crept through the window, Elena was already dressed and heading downstairs. Pruitt waited by the door, medical bag in hand, looking like he'd regretted his decision about 100 times overnight. "Storm's eased some," he said. "Still dangerous. Still might kill us. but it's possible now. Then let's go. They rode out together. The storm had weakened but not stopped. Snow still fell, wind still howled, but you could see maybe 50 feet instead of 10. Thunder seemed to remember the way. She led them back through the white landscape, picking the route she'd learned the night before. The ride back was slower. Pruitt was old, not suited for this kind of brutal travel. Several times, Elena thought he might fall from his horse, but he kept going, grumbling the whole way about crazy girls and their crazy promises. They reached Mercer Ranch 3 hours after dawn. Carson ran out to meet them, grabbed Thunder's reins. "Thank Christ, thought you were dead." "Not yet. The twins?" "Worse. Both of them. They're asking for you." Elena slid off Thunder, controlled this time, and ran for the house. Her legs were shaking, body exhausted beyond measure. But she forced herself up the stairs and into the twins' room. They looked terrible. Mara was unconscious, breathing in shallow gasps. Eli's eyes were open but glassy, unfocused. His lips were blue. "Elena?" Eli whispered. "You came back." "Of course I came back." She knelt beside his bed, took his burning hand in her frozen one. "And I brought the doctor. You're going to be fine." "Liar, I'm dying." "You're not dying. You're a Mercer. Mercers don't die from a little fever." "Mother did." Elena's chest tightened. "Your mother was in a different situation, but you're going to fight this. Understand? You're going to fight because I didn't ride through a blizzard so you could give up." Eli's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "I know, but I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Pruitt pushed past her, started examining both children. He worked quickly, efficiently, pulling medicines from his bag, listening to their breathing, checking their temperatures. His expression got grimmer with each passing second. "It's bad," he said finally. "Pneumonia, both of them. Advanced. They need constant care. Medicine every 4 hours, cool cloths to bring down the fever, fluids. And they need to fight, because there's only so much I can do." "They'll fight," Elena said with more confidence than she felt. For the next 12 hours, Elena barely left the twins' room. She administered medicine, changed cloths, forced water down their throats when they were too weak to drink. Pruitt helped, showing her what to do, when to do it. But mostly it was Elena, keeping vigil, keeping watch, keeping these two stubborn kids alive through sheer force of will. Mara woke once, looked at Elena with fever-bright eyes. "You rode through the storm?" "Yes." "That was stupid." "Probably. But brave." Mara's hand found Elena's. "Mother would have done the same thing." Elena's throat closed up. "Rest now. Save your strength." "Are we going to die?" "Not today." "Promise?" Elena thought about all the promises she'd made since arriving at this ranch. Promises to stay. Promises to fight. Promises that had seemed impossible at the time but that she'd kept through stubbornness and luck and refusing to quit. "I promise," she said. Mara smiled weakly. "Okay, I believe you." Night fell again. The storm finally broke, stars appearing through gaps in the clouds. Elena sat between the two beds, watching her charges breathe, and tried not to fall asleep herself. Every time her eyes closed, she jerked awake, terrified she'd miss something, that one of them would stop breathing and she wouldn't notice. Carson brought her food she didn't eat. Brought her coffee she drank like medicine. Brought her a blanket when she started shaking from exhaustion. "You need to rest," he said. "I'm fine." "Elena, you rode through a blizzard, nearly died, and haven't slept in 2 days. You're not fine." "I'll rest when they're stable." "Stubborn as Wade, you are." "Good." Around midnight, Eli's fever finally broke. His breathing eased. The blue tinge left his lips. He opened his eyes, clear eyes this time, and said, "I'm hungry." Elena nearly cried with relief. "That's a good sign. I'll get you some broth." By dawn, both twins were out of danger. Still weak, still sick, but alive. Fighting. Winning. Pruitt checked them one last time, nodded with satisfaction. "They'll make it. Another day and it might have been different. But you got them through." He looked at Elena with something like respect. "That was one hell of a ride you made." "Had to. Most people wouldn't have tried." "I'm not most people." "No," Pruitt said. "You're really not." He left after making sure they had enough medicine. Elena finally let herself collapse into a chair, too exhausted to move another inch. That's where Wade found her when he burst through the door 2 hours later, wild-eyed and covered in snow. "Elena? The twins?" Carson said he saw them sleeping peacefully in their beds and went pale with relief. "They're alive." "Yes. And you?" "Carson told me what you did. Told me you rode to town in the middle of a blizzard." Wade crossed the room, grabbed her shoulders. "Are you insane? You could have died." "They would have died. Then I would have handled it. You can't." He stopped, shook his head. Words seemed to fail him. Instead, he pulled her into a crushing hug. "You saved them, again. How do I keep ending up owing you everything?" "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." Wade pulled back, looked at her face. Really looked. Seeing the exhaustion, the frostbite on her cheeks, the absolute wreckage she'd made of herself to save his children. "You're the bravest person I've ever met. Braver than any man I know. Braver than me. I'm not brave. I was terrified the entire time." "That's what makes it brave." Wade's hands came up to frame her face. "Elena, Eli's voice interrupted them. "Father? You're back?" Wade turned to his son, and his whole face transformed with relief and love. He went to the bed, pulled Eli into a careful hug. "I'm back, and you're alive. That's all that matters." "Elena saved us. She rode through the storm." "I know. Your guardian angel apparently has a death wish." Mara stirred in the other bed, opened her eyes. "Father?" "Hey, sweetheart. I'm here. We're okay. Elena promised we'd be okay, and we are." Wade looked at Elena over his shoulder. Something in his expression made her chest tight. Gratitude and affection and something deeper that neither of them had put words to yet. But before anyone could say more, Carson appeared in the doorway, face grim. "Wade, we got trouble." The moment of peace shattered. Wade stood up, instantly alert. "What kind of trouble?" "Riders approaching, 20 of them, maybe more, coming from the east." "Thornton." "Probably." Wade's expression went hard as stone. He looked at Elena, at his children, at everything he stood to lose. "Get them to the root cellar, now. Wade, do it, Elena, please." He grabbed his rifle from where he'd left it against the wall. "This is what we've been waiting for. Thornton's making his move, and I'm going to end this once and for all." He was out the door before she could argue. Elena heard him shouting orders, heard men running, heard the sounds of war preparations. And she realized, with cold certainty, that the real battle was just beginning. Elena got the twins to the root cellar, settled them on blankets with water and the remaining medicine, told them to stay quiet no matter what they heard. Mara grabbed her wrist before she could leave. "You're coming back, right?" "Of course. You said that last time before you rode into the storm." "And I came back, didn't I?" Elena squeezed her hand. "Stay here. Take care of your brother. I'll handle everything else." She climbed out and sealed the door, covering it with the rug that hid the entrance. Then she ran outside to find Wade. The ranch had transformed into a fortress. Men crouched behind wagons, barrels, fence posts, anything that could stop a bullet. Rifles gleamed in the late morning sun. The air tasted like metal and fear. Wade stood in the center of it all, directing positions, his face a mask of controlled fury. He saw Elena and his expression darkened. "You should be in the cellar. The twins are in the cellar. I'm needed here." "Elena, don't. We don't have time for this argument." She moved past him, grabbed a rifle from Carson's hands. "Show me how to use this." Carson blinked. "You ever shot a gun before?" "No, but I rode through a blizzard I'd never done before either. Teach me fast." He showed her the basics: how to load, how to aim, how to handle the kick. It took 3 minutes. Not nearly enough time to become competent, but enough to be dangerous. The riders appeared at the edge of the property, 23 men on horseback, Thornton in the lead. They stopped just outside rifle range, a deliberate show of force. Thornton sat tall in his saddle, looking every bit the conquering general. Wade stepped forward, rifle in his hands but pointed down. "You're on my land, Thornton. Turn around or there's going to be trouble." Thornton's laugh carried across the distance. "Your land! For how much longer, Wade? You're finished. Everyone knows it. Time to accept reality and walk away." "Only place I'm walking is forward. You want this ranch, you'll have to take it over my corpse." "That can be arranged." Thornton gestured to his men. 23 against what, 15 of you? And half your people are probably terrified hired hands who'll run at the first gunshot. This doesn't have to end in blood, Wade. Just sign over the deed and we'll ride away peaceful. Go to hell. Stubborn to the end. Catherine was the same way. Stubborn, proud, bleeding to death, and still refusing to beg for help. Thornton's smile was vicious. Tell me, Wade, does the new girl bleed as pretty? Wade raised his rifle. The click of safeties being released echoed across the ranch as every one of his men aimed at Thornton's group. Last chance, Wade said quietly. Leave. Now. Or what? You'll start a shooting war? Kill half my men and lose half of yours? Over what? Pride? A failing ranch? A bought girl? Thornton shook his head. You've already lost, Wade. You just don't know it yet. Elena stepped forward before Wade could respond. Her legs still shook from exhaustion. Her hands were barely healed from frostbite, but her voice came out steady and clear. He's not alone, Thornton. Every head turned to look at her. Thornton's eyes narrowed. The bought girl speaks. How touching. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the 40 ranchers who formed an alliance last week. The same 40 who've been documenting every theft, every suspicious loss, every piece of evidence that ties you to systematic sabotage across this territory. Elena held up the ledger she'd grabbed from the house. It's all here. Every crime, every victim. And copies of this ledger are already with the territorial marshal, the county sheriff, and 3 newspapers in the nearest cities. You touch Wade Mercer, you touch any of us, and you'll have 40 ranches coming for you. Not to mention the law. Thornton's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to test that theory? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's outnumbered. We've got community, we've got evidence, we've got the law on our side. What do you have? Money? Fear? That doesn't mean much when everyone finally stops being afraid. Silence stretched across the frozen ground. Thornton's men shifted in their saddles, suddenly looking less confident. Some of them were probably hired guns who'd signed up for easy intimidation, not a war against half the territory. Wade moved to stand beside Elena. Then Carson. Then every single one of their men, forming a line of solidarity that said clearer than words, "You go through all of us." Thornton stared at them, his face going red with rage. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Wade said. "You made a mistake, Thornton. You thought breaking me would be easy. Thought I was already broken after Catherine died. But you didn't account for the people who refused to let me stay broken. You didn't account for community, and you sure as hell didn't account for her." He nodded toward Elena. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around, you're going to ride back to your pristine ranch, and you're going to wait for the marshal to arrive with a warrant for your arrest. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, negligent homicide, take your pick. We've got evidence for all of it. You think a warrant means anything out here? I own the local sheriff. I've got connections that had connections," Elena interrupted. Past tense. Because the Alliance sent letters to every authority within 200 miles. And funny thing about systematic crime, once people start looking, they find patterns. They find other victims. They find enough evidence that even bought sheriffs can't ignore it. Thornton's horse danced sideways, sensing its rider's agitation. "This is insane. You're nobody. A bought girl playing at being important. You think anyone actually respects you? They pity you at best, laugh at you at worst. You're property, girl. You'll always be property." The words hit like bullets. Elena felt them land, felt the old shame trying to claw its way back up her throat. 6 months ago, those words would have destroyed her, would have confirmed every fear she had about what she'd become, what she'd never escape being. But 6 months ago, she hadn't ridden through a blizzard to save dying children, hadn't built a ranch back from the edge of collapse, hadn't stood beside a broken man and helped him remember how to fight. "You're right," Elena said quietly. "I was bought, sold like livestock because I had nothing and no one. And you know what? That should have been the end of my story, should have been the end of me. But it wasn't, because I refused to let it be. I built something here, I became something here, and the only person who still thinks of me as property is you. Everyone else," she gestured to the men around her, to Wade standing solid at her side. "Everyone else sees a person, sees family, sees someone worth fighting beside." Wade's hand found hers squeezed hard. "She saved my children's lives, twice. She saved this ranch. She saved me. And if you ever call her property again, warrant or no warrant, I'll put a bullet between your eyes myself." The violence in Wade's voice was absolute. This was a man who'd been holding back for months, years maybe, trying to do things the right way, the legal way. But that restraint had limits, and Thornton had just found them. Thornton must have heard it too, because his bravado finally cracked. "This isn't over," he repeated, but it sounded hollow now. "I've got lawyers. I've got money. I'll fight this." "You do that," Wade said. "From a jail cell." Thornton yanked his horse around viciously, nearly unseating himself. His men followed, some looking relieved to be leaving, others looking disappointed. There hadn't been more of a fight. They rode away in a cloud of snow and failure, getting smaller until they disappeared into the tree line. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Carson lowered his rifle and let out a breath. "Well, that was something." "Is it really over?" one of the younger hands asked. "For now," Wade said. He still hadn't let go of Elena's hand. "But we keep watch. Keep weapons ready. Thornton's the type to lick his wounds and come back meaner." "What about the marshal?" "He'll come when he comes. Until then, we document everything, every threat, every suspicious incident. Build the case until it's so solid even Thornton's lawyers can't tear it apart." The men dispersed slowly, still on edge, but the immediate tension had broken. Elena felt her knees start to buckle. Wade caught her, held her up. "You need to rest," he said. "The twins are safe in the cellar. They can stay there another hour while you sleep." "I'm fine." "Elena, you're swaying. You rode through a blizzard, spent 2 days nursing sick children, and just faced down the most dangerous man in the territory. You've earned the right to collapse." She wanted to argue, but her body agreed with Wade. The adrenaline that had kept her upright was draining away, leaving nothing but exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. Wade picked her up, just swept her into his arms like she weighed nothing, and carried her into the house. She should have protested, should have insisted she could walk, but instead she let her head rest against his chest and listened to his heartbeat and thought about how strange it was that being carried felt like coming home. He laid her on his bed, not hers, pulled a blanket over her, sat on the edge looking at her like he was trying to memorize her face. "You terrify me," he said quietly. "Good. You should be terrified. I'm dangerous." "I'm serious. When Carson told me you'd ridden into that storm," his voice broke, "I thought I'd lost you, thought I'd come back to find you frozen in a ditch somewhere. And I realized I couldn't breathe at the thought, couldn't function, because somewhere in the last 6 months you stopped being the help or the obligation or the girl I bought. You became—" "Don't," Elena interrupted. "Don't say it yet. Not while I'm this tired, not while everything's still a mess. Say it when we're safe, when the twins are healthy, when Thornton's actually in jail and not just scared off for a day." Wade smiled sadly. "Always practical. Someone has to be." He leaned down, kissed her forehead. "Sleep. I'll get the twins and make sure they're settled. When you wake up, we'll figure out what comes next." Elena was asleep before he finished talking. She woke 12 hours later to the smell of food cooking and children's laughter. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot everything except the warmth and the safety and the strange peace of it. Then memory returned, the blizzard, the confrontation, Thornton's retreat, and she sat up fast. Her body immediately reminded her why that was a bad idea. Every muscle screamed. Her hands throbbed where the frostbite was still healing. Her head pounded with exhaustion not fully recovered from. But she was alive. The twins were alive. They'd survived. Elena dragged herself downstairs. In the kitchen, Wade was making dinner while Mara and Eli sat at the table playing cards. The twins still looked pale and weak, but they were laughing. Actually laughing, like children instead of soldiers in a war zone. Wade turned when he heard her. "You're awake." "How long was I out?" "Since yesterday morning. It's evening now. Almost full day." He set down the spoon he'd been stirring with. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by your entire herd." "Sounds about right." He poured her coffee, added the sugar he'd learned she preferred. "Twins are doing better. Fever's completely gone. Pruitt came by to check on them, said they'll be weak for another week, but they're out of danger." "And Thornton?" Wade's expression darkened. "No sign of him. But 2 of the Alliance ranchers stopped by, said they'd heard about the confrontation. Said to tell you half the territory's talking about the girl who faced down Thornton armed with nothing but a ledger and attitude." "Great. I'm famous." You're respected. There's a difference. Wade handed her the coffee. Carson's been fielding questions all day. People want to know who you are, where you came from, how long you've been here. Think you broke some kind of frontier record for shortest time between arriving and becoming a legend. I'm not a legend. I'm exhausted. Mara looked up from her cards. You're a legend to us. You saved our lives. And rode through a blizzard, Eli added, and stood up to Thornton, and kept this whole place running when it should have fallen apart. Elena sat down at the table, too tired to protest. I just did what needed doing. That's what makes you dangerous, Wade said. You see what needs doing, and you do it. No hesitation, no excuses. Most people spend their whole lives making excuses. Most people didn't get sold on an auction block. Changes your perspective on what's survivable. The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Wade's face shifted into something pained. Elena, I'm not angry. Not anymore. Just stating facts. She sipped the coffee, let the warmth spread through her. 6 months ago, I was nothing. Property, like Thornton said. No family, no future, no hope. And yeah, getting bought isn't exactly the start of a fairy tale. But you gave me something when you did that. Maybe not freedom, not exactly, but you gave me a chance, a place to become something other than a victim. And I took that chance and I ran with it, and I turned it into this. She gestured around the warm kitchen, at the twins who'd stopped hating her, at Wade, who was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. So no, I'm not angry. I'm grateful. Wade opened his mouth to respond, but Eli interrupted. Are you going to marry Father? The question hung in the air like a gunshot. Mara kicked her brother under the table. Wade looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Elena choked on her coffee. Eli, Mara hissed. You can't just ask that. Why not? It's obvious they like each other, and Elena practically runs everything anyway. Might as well make it official. That's not how it works. How does it work then? Wade cleared his throat. Kids, why don't you go upstairs for a bit? Let Elena and me talk. But I want to hear... Now, Eli. The twins left reluctantly, Mara dragging her protesting brother behind her. The kitchen went very quiet. Elena set down her coffee cup carefully. We don't have to talk about this. Yeah, we do. Wade sat down across from her. Because Eli's right. It's obvious. And I'm tired of pretending it's not. Wade, I love you. The words came out simple, direct, no poetry to them. Just truth. Don't know when it started. Maybe when you first stood up to the twins. Maybe when you caught the sabotage pattern I'd been too blind to see. Maybe the moment you rode into that storm and I realized I couldn't survive losing you. But it happened, and I'm done hiding it. Elena's chest tightened until she could barely breathe. I'm still bound to you by contract, still technically property for another 6.5 years. How do you love someone you own? I don't own you. Maybe I did at the start, legally, but you stopped being property the moment you decided to fight instead of just survive. You're not mine, Elena. You're your own, and I... He reached across the table, took her hand. I'm asking. Not demanding, not expecting, asking if maybe you could see a future where we're more than employer and employee, more than convenient partnership, more than... I already see it, Elena interrupted. Have been seeing it for months. Every time you trusted me with something important, every time you looked at me like I mattered, every time you proved that buying me was the best thing that happened to both of us. She squeezed his hand. But I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we make this real, I'm not going to be the quiet ranch wife who stays in the kitchen. I'm going to keep running the books, keep making decisions, keep fighting beside you when things get bad. Because that's who I am now. That's who I became here. Wade smiled, real and warm, in the first fully happy expression she'd seen on his face. I wouldn't want you any other way. Catherine ran this place better than I did. Wasn't looking to replace her with someone softer. Was looking for someone strong enough to stand beside me. And you, he shook his head, you're stronger than both of us combined. So what now? Now we finish this thing with Thornton. Make sure he actually pays for what he did. Get the ranch stable again. And then... Wade stood up, pulled her to her feet, drew her close. Then I marry you properly, not because of a contract or convenience, Because I want to spend the rest of my life watching you terrify people and save things and be the most dangerously competent person in any room. Elena laughed despite everything. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only proposal you've ever heard. Fair point. He kissed her then, properly this time. Not the desperate kisses from before, but something slower, deeper, full of promises neither of them was afraid to make anymore. Elena melted into it, let herself feel the safety and the wanting and the absolute rightness of this moment. When they finally broke apart, Wade rested his forehead against hers. The twins are going to be insufferable about this. They're already insufferable. This just gives them new material. True. A knock on the door interrupted them. Carson stuck his head in, saw them standing close, and grinned. About damn time. Thought you two were going to dance around this forever. We weren't dancing, Elena said. You were absolutely dancing. Whole ranch was taking bets on when you'd figure it out. Carson's grin faded. But that's not why I'm here. Marshall just rode in. Says he needs to talk to both of you. Now. The moment of peace shattered. Wade's expression went hard again. He's early. Maybe that's good, Elena said. Means he's taking this seriously. They went outside together. The territorial marshal sat on his horse near the barn, a weathered man in his 50s with the kind of face that had seen too much and believed too little. 2 deputies flanked him. Wade Mercer? The marshal asked. That's me. I'm Marshal Hendricks. Got your complaint about Samuel Thornton. Also got similar complaints from 30 other ranchers. And some very interesting ledgers showing systematic theft and sabotage. He climbed down from his horse. Normally I'd say this is a civil matter. Let the court sort it out. But then I started digging. Found out Thornton's been pulling this same scheme for years. Different territories, different victims, always staying just ahead of the law. His eyes found Elena. You the one who put this all together? Yes, sir. Hell of a job. Most people wouldn't have caught the pattern, wouldn't have documented it so thoroughly. Hendricks pulled a folded paper from his coat. Got a warrant here for Thornton's arrest. Fraud, theft, conspiracy. And after what I heard about him deliberately letting a woman bleed to death, I'm adding negligent homicide to the list. But here's the thing. I need someone willing to testify. Someone who can walk a jury through this evidence and make it stick. You willing to do that? Elena glanced at Wade. He nodded, trusting her to make the call. I'll testify, she said. Good, because Thornton's lawyers are going to tear into you, going to try to discredit you every way possible. They'll bring up your past, your purchase, everything they can to make you look unreliable. You prepared for that? I've survived worse than lawyers. Hendricks smiled grimly. Yeah, I believe you have. He turned back to Wade. I'm heading to Thornton's ranch now to serve this warrant, bringing him in for trial. You want to come watch? You're welcome to. But Wade, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, you let the law handle this. Understand? Wade's jaw worked. Understood. They rode out together, Wade, Elena, Carson, and 3 other hands as witnesses. The marshal led them to Thornton's pristine ranch, where hired men still maintained fences and painted buildings and pretended their employer wasn't a criminal. Thornton came out when he saw them approaching. His face went pale when he saw the marshal. Samuel Thornton, Hendricks called out. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, theft, conspiracy, and negligent homicide. You need to come with me. This is insane. I've done nothing. Save it for the judge. Hendricks dismounted, pulled out iron shackles. You can come peaceful, or you can come in chains. Your choice. For a moment, Elena thought Thornton might fight. His hand drifted toward the gun at his hip. His men tensed, reaching for their own weapons. Then Thornton's eyes met Elena's across the space between them. She saw the calculation there, the rage, the absolute hatred of a man who'd underestimated someone he should have feared. This is your doing, he said to her. All of it. Yes, Elena said simply. It is. You'll regret this. My lawyers will lose. Because I documented everything. Because I built a case even expensive lawyers can't crack. Because I'm smarter than you gave me credit for. Elena stepped forward. You made a mistake, Thornton. You thought I was nothing, property. A bought girl too broken to fight back, but I'm not nothing, and I'm not broken. I'm the woman who destroyed you. Thornton lunged toward her. Wade and Carson both moved, but Hendricks was faster. He had Thornton on the ground, shackled, before anyone else could reach him. That's enough, the marshal said. You just added attempted assault to your charges. Keep making my job easier. They took Thornton away in chains, his empire crumbling, his influence shattered. Wade watched him go with grim satisfaction. It's really over, he said. The legal part is just starting, Elena reminded him. Trial's going to take months. He'll fight every step. But he'll lose because of you. Because of us, Elena corrected. All of us. The alliance. The documentation. Everyone who refused to stay silent. Wade pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Still, mostly you. They rode home as the sun set, painting the snow gold and pink. The ranch looked different now, still scarred from the barn fire, still showing signs of struggle, but somehow more solid, more permanent, like it had survived the worst and come out stronger. Elena realized that's exactly what had happened. They'd all survived the worst, and now they got to see what came after. The trial took 4 months. 4 months of Elena riding to the county seat 3 times a week, sitting in uncomfortable chairs while lawyers tried to tear apart everything she'd built. Thornton's defense team was exactly as vicious as Marshal Hendricks had warned. 3 men in expensive suits who treated the courtroom like a stage and Elena like their favorite target. They questioned her past. How did a girl with no education understand complex financial records? They questioned her motives. Wasn't she just a disgruntled servant trying to bring down her betters? They questioned her character. What kind of woman sells herself into servitude and then pretends to be respectable? Elena answered every question with the same calm precision she'd used to track Thornton's thefts. Yes, she'd been sold. Yes, she'd been desperate. And yes, she'd learned to read ledgers because survival required it. She didn't apologize, didn't flinch, just laid out the facts until even the most skeptical jurors started looking at the defense lawyers like they were the ones on trial. The turning point came when Thornton himself took the stand. His lawyers had probably advised against it, but his ego wouldn't let him stay silent. He sat in the witness box looking imperious and wronged, telling a story about how he'd been a good neighbor, how these accusations were nothing but jealousy from failing ranchers who couldn't compete. Then the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Margaret Bell, who'd made her career destroying men like Thornton, asked a simple question. Mr. Thornton, on the day Catherine Mercer died, where were you? Thornton's face went carefully blank. I don't recall. You don't recall? A woman died in childbirth and you don't remember where you were? It was 3 years ago. Yet several witnesses have testified that you were seen near Mercer Ranch that day, riding past, in fact, while Mrs. Mercer was in labor. Bell walked closer to the witness box. One witness specifically remembers you because he asked if you could ride to town and fetch the doctor. You had the fastest horse. You could have saved her life. What did you tell him? Thornton's jaw tightened. I don't remember the conversation. He remembers. He said you told him it wasn't your problem, that Catherine Mercer had made her bed and could die in it for all you cared. Bell's voice cut like a knife. Does that sound like something you'd say? I never Because that's exactly the kind of thing a man would say if he'd been systematically sabotaging her husband's ranch, if he'd been waiting for an opportunity to force Wade Mercer into selling, if he saw a woman's death as convenient rather than tragic. Objection. Thornton's lead lawyer jumped up. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said. But the damage was done. The jury had seen Thornton's face when confronted with what he'd done, seen the guilt there, barely hidden. After that, the defense fell apart. Witness after witness confirmed the pattern of theft. Rancher after rancher testified to similar suspicious losses. And Elena's ledgers, precise, detailed, impossible to dispute, painted a picture of systematic criminal activity that even expensive lawyers couldn't explain away. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman read the verdict in a voice that carried to every corner of the packed courtroom. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of theft, guilty. On the count of conspiracy, guilty. On the count of negligent homicide. He paused, looked at Thornton directly. Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Thornton's face went white. His lawyers immediately started shouting about appeals. But Marshal Hendricks was already moving, putting Thornton back in chains, leading him away to a cell he'd occupy for the next 15 years. Elena sat in the gallery, Wade's hand gripping hers, and felt something inside her finally settle. Justice wasn't pretty. wasn't satisfying the way stories made it seem. But it was real, and it was done. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. The trial had drawn attention from newspapers across 3 territories, partly because of Thornton's prominence, partly because the story of a sold girl bringing down a land baron was too good not to print. "Miss Voss, is it true you rode through a blizzard to save Mr. Mercer's children? Miss Voss, what's it like being a woman in charge of a frontier ranch? Miss Voss, are the rumors true that you and Mr. Mercer are engaged?" Wade pulled her through the crowd, not answering, just getting them to the wagon. But Elena caught sight of one reporter's notebook where he'd written, "The girl who became legend." She almost laughed. 6 months ago, she'd been nobody. Property. Now reporters were writing about her like she was someone who mattered. The ride home was quiet. Wade seemed lost in thought, staring at the road ahead. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "You're thinking about Catherine. How'd you know?" "Because I would be too, if I just watched the man who let someone I loved die get sentenced to prison." Wade nodded slowly. "Keep thinking I should feel satisfied. Happy, even. But mostly I just feel tired. Like I've been carrying this weight for 3 years, and now that it's gone, I don't know what to do with the space it left." "You fill it with something better. That's what you do with empty spaces." "And what would that be?" Elena looked at the mountains rising around them, the valley that had become home. The ranch where 2 stubborn children were probably driving Carson insane while they waited for news. You fill it with living, with the family you've still got, with the future instead of the past. Wade pulled the wagon to a stop, right there in the middle of the road. He turned to face her fully. "Elena Voss, will you marry me?" She blinked. "You already asked me that months ago. I said yes. That was different. That was in a barn, covered in dust, after almost dying. This is—" He reached into his coat, pulled out a small box. "This is me asking properly, with a ring and everything." Elena opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond. Nothing extravagant, but real. Beautiful. "I bought it 3 months ago," Wade said. "Been carrying it around waiting for the right moment. Figured after we won, after Thornton was dealt with, after everything settled, that would be the right moment." "It's perfect." Elena's throat was tight. "So is that a yes? Official this time?" "It was official last time, but yes. Again. Always yes." Wade slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like he'd somehow known her size despite never asking. Then he kissed her, long and slow and full of promises about the future they'd fought so hard to have. When they got back to the ranch, the twins were waiting on the porch. Mara saw the ring first and shrieked so loud it scared the horses. "You're getting married, really married." "Really married," Wade confirmed. Eli grinned. "Does this mean Elena's officially our mother now?" Elena froze. They'd been dancing around that question for months. The twins had started calling her by name instead of Miss or Ma'am, had started trusting her, depending on her. But Mother was different. Mother meant replacing someone irreplaceable. Mara seemed to read her thoughts. "You're not replacing our mother, you're you, and we want you to be you, officially. If that's okay," Eli added quickly. "We know it's weird and we're almost 13, so maybe we're too old for a new mother, but—" "It's more than okay," Elena interrupted. Her eyes were burning. "It's everything." They crashed into her, both twins at once, hugging her so hard she almost fell over. Wade steadied them all, and for a moment they stood there in a tangle of arms and emotion and something that finally actually felt like family. Carson appeared from the barn, took one look at them, and shook his head. "About damn time. Now can we get back to running this ranch? Because while you've all been off playing courthouse, we've got spring calving starting and I can't do everything myself." The wedding happened 6 weeks later. They'd planned something small, just the ranch hands and a few neighbors. But word spread the way word does on the frontier, and by the time the day arrived, over 100 people had shown up. Ranchers from the Alliance, townspeople from Ashford Station, even Marshal Hendricks rode in to witness it. They set up in the valley below the house, where the first wildflowers were starting to push through the last patches of snow. Someone had built a makeshift altar. Carson had somehow procured a preacher, a traveling minister who performed frontier weddings between his regular circuit. Elena wore a dress she'd made herself, simple blue fabric she'd traded for in town. Mara had braided wildflowers into her hair. She looked nothing like a bought girl standing on an auction block. She looked like exactly what she'd become, a woman who belonged to herself. Wade wore his best suit, the one he'd probably been married in the first time, but he'd had it altered, updated, like he was marking the difference between then and now, between Catherine and Elena. Both women he'd loved, but in different ways, in different lives. The ceremony was short. The preacher asked the standard questions. Wade answered in a voice that carried across the valley. Elena answered just as clearly. Then they were married, sealed with a kiss that made Eli groan and Mara cheer, and the assembled crowd whistle and applaud. At the reception, tables loaded with food that the Alliance ranchers had all contributed, Dutch raised a toast. To Wade and Elena Mercer, the man who refused to quit and the woman who refused to let him. May your ranch prosper. May your enemies fear you, and may you keep giving the rest of us hope that we can survive anything this frontier throws at us. Everyone drank. Then Carson stood up, swaying slightly. And to Elena specifically, who rode through a blizzard, faced down the meanest son of a bitch in 3 territories, and made running a ranch look easy even though we all know it's not. You're one of us now, officially. And we don't let go of our own. More cheers. More drinking. Elena felt overwhelmed by all of it. The attention, the respect, the way these hardened frontier people looked at her like she was one of them. Like she'd earned her place not through purchase or marriage, but through sheer stubborn competence. Late in the evening, when the party had mellowed into quiet conversations and the twins had finally fallen asleep under a blanket near the fire, Elena found herself standing at the edge of the crowd, looking up at the stars. Wade appeared beside her, handed her a cup of something warm. "Thinking?" he asked. "About how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was standing on a platform waiting to be sold, terrified, broken, convinced my life was over. And now? Now I'm married to the man who bought me, running a ranch, raising his children, and somehow all of it feels right instead of wrong." Wade was quiet for a moment. "Does it bother you that we started the way we did?" Elena considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, when I think about it too much. But then I remember that you gave me a choice. Not at first. Nobody gets choices when they're desperate. But every day after. You could have treated me like property, could have used the contract to control me. But you didn't. You let me become something, trusted me with real responsibility, gave me room to be more than what I was bought to be. You would have been more regardless. That was you, not me. Maybe, but you gave me the space to find out." Elena turned to face him. "And here's the thing Wade never tells anyone. You were just as desperate as I was that day. You needed someone to save you from drowning, to pull this ranch back from the edge, to give you a reason to keep fighting. So maybe I was bought, but maybe you were saved, and maybe that makes us even." Wade pulled her close. "Not even. I got the better end of this deal by miles. Agree to disagree." They stood there under the stars, listening to the sounds of celebration winding down, and Elena thought about everything that had changed. The ranch was stable now, profitable even, with new timber contracts and cattle prices rising. The twins were healthy, happy, calling her mother without hesitation. The territory respected her, and Wade loved her with the kind of love that wasn't about ownership or obligation, but about seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. She'd become someone she never imagined being. Not the girl her father had destroyed with his debts. Not the property bought on an auction block, but a woman who'd taken the worst situation possible and turned it into something worth having. The frontier had tried to break her, had thrown everything at her: poverty, humiliation, backbreaking work, hostile children, criminal neighbors, deadly storms. And she'd survived all of it. More than survived. She'd conquered. Over the next year, Mercer Ranch became the most successful operation in the territory. Elena's management systems, the careful tracking, the strategic planning, the alliance partnerships, became the model other ranches started copying. People rode in from 100 miles away just to ask her advice. Women especially, drawn by stories of the bought girl who'd become a legend. Elena gave them the truth, not fairy tales. She told them it was hard, that surviving the frontier meant working until your hands bled. That respect was earned through action, not given freely. That you couldn't wait for someone to save you, you had to save yourself. Some of them listened. Some didn't. But the ones who did started creating their own legends, started proving that women could run ranches, manage books, make decisions, stand up to men who thought the frontier belonged exclusively to them. Elena watched them and thought about how change happens. Not through single dramatic moments, but through stubborn persistence. Through refusing to accept what everyone said was impossible. Through taking the space you needed instead of waiting for permission. The twins grew up fierce and capable. Mara developed her mother's head for numbers and her father's stubborn pride. Eli became the kind of man who could work all day and still find energy to help his sister with her studies. Both of them treated Elena with a mixture of love and respect that said clearer than words, "This is our mother," regardless of how she started here. Wade never looked at another woman, never treated Elena like she was second choice or replacement. He built their partnership on trust and equality, asking her opinion on every major decision, trusting her judgment even when it contradicted his own. They fought sometimes, both too stubborn to always agree, but they fought fair, and they fought together against problems instead of against each other. And Elena finally understood what Catherine had known all those years ago. The frontier didn't care about your past, didn't care where you came from or what you'd been. It only cared about what you did today and tomorrow and the day after that. It cared about whether you quit or kept fighting. Elena had never quit, and she never would. One morning, 2 years after the wedding, Elena stood on the porch watching the sun rise over a valley that belonged to her family. The ranch stretched in every direction, expanded now, thriving, employing 30 hands instead of 20. The house had been rebuilt, repaired, turned into something warm and solid. The barns were full, the cattle were healthy. Everything they'd fought for had become real. Wade came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" About the girl who stood on that auction block, about how terrified she was, how certain she was that her life was over. And how wrong she was. Her life wasn't ending. It was just beginning. But she couldn't see it yet because she was looking at the wrong things, looking at the humiliation instead of the opportunity, looking at what she'd lost instead of what she might gain. Wade was quiet for a moment. Then, "You think you'd tell her anything if you could go back?" Elena thought about it. "I'd tell her it's going to hurt. It's going to be harder than anything she's ever done. She's going to want to quit 1,000 times. But I'd also tell her to hold on, to fight, to trust that there's something worth surviving for on the other side of all that pain." Would she believe you? Probably not, but she'd find out anyway. They stood together watching the day begin, two people who'd both been broken and both refused to stay that way. Behind them, the twins were waking up, starting their daily argument about whose turn it was to feed the chickens. Inside the house, coffee was brewing. Outside, the ranch hands were preparing for another day of hard work that would never quite be finished because that's what frontier life was. Endless work that you did anyway, because the alternative was giving up. Elena had been bought for $600, but she'd earned everything that came after through blood and sweat, and refusing to accept that being sold meant being powerless. She'd proved that your beginning didn't determine your ending, that property could become a person, that survival could become victory if you fought hard enough and long enough and smart enough. The frontier had tried to break her, but the frontier had underestimated who it was dealing with. Because Elena Voss Mercer wasn't the kind of woman who broke. She was the kind who broke other things, expectations, assumptions, barriers that said women couldn't do what she'd done. And now, standing on her porch on her ranch beside her husband with her children waking up behind her, Elena understood what Catherine had written in the margins of that first ledger, back when the ranch was new and everything was still possible. The note that Elena had found months ago and kept as a reminder. It said, "The frontier doesn't give you anything. You take it, you fight for it, you earn it, and then you hold on with everything you have because that's the only way to survive something that wants to kill you. But if you do survive, if you take what you need and hold it against everything trying to tear it away, then you become something the frontier can't touch. You become stronger than the thing that tried to break you." Elena had become that, and she'd taught her children to become it too. And maybe, in some small way, she'd helped dozens of other women see that they could become it as well. That was her real legacy. Not the ranch, not the money, not even the love she'd found, but the proof, living, breathing, impossible to deny proof, that you could start as nothing and become everything if you refused to quit. The sun climbed higher. The day began in earnest. Elena stepped off the porch and into her life, the life she'd built from scraps and stubbornness, the life that was hers in a way nothing had ever been before. And she smiled, because the girl on the auction block would never believe where she'd ended up, would never believe that the worst day of her life was actually the doorway to the best years. But Elena knew, and that knowledge, that absolute certainty that she'd earned every single piece of happiness she had, made everything she'd survived worth it. The frontier had taken everything from her, and she'd taken it all back, plus interest. That was victory. Real, hard-won, impossible to take away victory. And it was hers, forever.